Chapter 407. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, Zhong Peng's sword chi grew even more intense, as an ancient sword astral soul appeared above his head. 4 colored astral souls, all in the form of swords. In an instant, a surge of sword chi swept across the heavens and earth, destroying everything in its path. Qin Wentian said that Zhong Peng wasn't worthy. How powerful! The countenances of the spectators trembled. Zhong Peng was the strongest contender for the position of Sword Sun. His 4th astral soul originated from the 5th heavenly layer, and was a shadow sword. Zhong Peng's sword was formless and formless, possessing terrifying might. Yet, Qin Wentian's countenance didn't change in the slightest. In fact, he didn't even glance at Zhong Peng. His gaze was still fixed on Zhong Hong. Qin Wentian took a step forward as a stifling sword might enveloped Zhong Hong. This sword might exuded a sense of righteousness, akin to the Tao of Kings, wanting to crush Zhong Hong's sword heart. Qin Wentian stared straight at Zhong Hong. In the center of his brows, there seemed to be a third eye staring at Zhong Hong. That night, who was it that told you to look for me? As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian took another step forward as a tyrannical will gushed into Zhong Hong's sea of consciousness, destroying Zhong Hong's will. Zhong Hong's entire body trembled as though he was about to suffocate. He held, Zhong Peng. Qin Wentian, you are going too far. Zhong Peng roared in rage as he stepped forward. Qin Wentian swept a glance over as his terrifying will gushed into Zhong Hong's sea of consciousness. That terrifying third eye caused Zhong Peng's footsteps to halt abruptly. Qin Wentian stared at Zhong Hong as he faintly spoke. As a sword cultivator, your sword heart isn't strong enough, allowing others to make use of you. Go back and reflect on your actions. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian's palms trembled. Instantly, Zhong Hong's body was flung through the air by a terrifying force, directly landing on the arena far away. Puchi! Zhong Hong coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. At this moment, his countenance abruptly changed. That short instant earlier felt like an eternity to him. Facing against Qin Wentian, he felt as though he was facing an insurmountable mountain. The gap between him and Qin Wentian was so huge. However, Qin Wentian's voice just now was like the sound of a bell, shaking directly into his mind. If one sword heart was not firm, he would be used by others? You actually dared to bully the weak of the Zhong clan in front of me? The elder in the air was infuriated. The sword intent radiating from him grew even more terrifying. Qin Wentian raised his head to look at him. His expression did not change at all. He stared back at him like a sharp sword. Elder, this person is so rebellious. Let me handle him. Zhong Peng drew in a deep breath as the humming of swords echoed throughout the heavens and earth. In the air, 4 astral novas radiated sword light, and in that instant, the entire heavens and earth were filled with the sound of swords whistling through the air. The spectators all retreated, not daring to get close. The sword intent was so strong that it could kill from a distance. Zhong Peng had already been in the Heavenly Dipper realm for 2 years, and had already condensed 4 astral novas. How terrifying was his combat prowess! His eyes were filled with a towering battle intent as he stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian slowly turned his head, staring at Zhong Peng. Zhong Hong's actions were instigated by Zhong Peng. In that case, Zhong Hong's schemes were extremely deep. Zhong Hong wanted to seize the position of Sword Sun from Zhong Peng, yet he didn't do it openly. Instead, he wanted to ruin Zhong Peng's reputation, making it hard for him to establish a foothold in the Zhong clan. Zhong Peng's character was despicable. Bang! Qin Wentian stepped out, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. A surge of kingly sword might gushed forth, and in that instant, the youths all felt the ancient sword strapped on their backs humming as they trembled unceasingly. In an instant, hundreds of swords hummed in unison. Zhong Peng pointed out with his finger, and instantly, 4 astral novas shot forward. However, at this instant, Qin Wentian took another step forward as the ancient sword strapped on his back rose up into the air. The kingly sword might of the kingly sword might swept over everything, causing the 4 astral novas to tremble violently in the air, unable to advance any further. Such a bizarre scene caused the eyes of the spectators to narrow as their countenances were filled with terror. How is this possible? The scene before their eyes was unbelievable. Even for Zhong Peng, His gaze froze as the boundless sword might around him froze. His astral novas seemed to be met with a formless resistance, unable to advance any further. Die. Zongpeng howled in rage. His finger pressed down, and instantly, the sword might gushed forth, converging onto the 4 astral novas as they continued to press forward. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian took another step forward. This simple step seemed to fuse together with the sword qi of the heavens and earth as one. He was the origin of the 10,000 swords. He was the sovereign of the Tao of the sword. Rumble. A fearsome will of sword might gushed forth from Qin Wentian, causing Zongpeng's 4 astral novas to stagnate once again. Such a scene caused Zongpeng to lose all face. With a howl of rage, he soared through the air, appearing in front of his 4 astral novas as the will of his sword will frenziedly erupted forth. With a wave of his palms, a screen of swords appeared, enveloping the astral novas as a resplendent light erupted forth, so bright that it was as though the sun was about to rise. With your character, you are not worthy of me unsheathing my sword. Qin Wentian faintly spoke. His calm voice swept through the air, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble in shock. What level of strength did Zongpeng have? Yet Qin Wentian actually said that Zongpeng wasn't worthy of him unsheathing his sword? At this moment, Qin Wentian's cultivation base erupted forth, allowing the spectators to clearly see that his cultivation base was the same as Zongpeng, at the first level of Heavenly Dipper. However, the sword might of the Tao of Kings could be felt from him. It was as though he was the king, the sovereign of everything. Qin Wentian took another step forward, causing the keening of his sword to echo out unceasingly. A crisp cracking sound rang out as Zongpeng, who was in the air, groaned in agony. He felt as though his astral novas were about to shatter. Astral novas were the foundation of all Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. If their astral novas were shattered, their Yuanfu would also shatter. For example, if a Heavenly Dipper sovereign condensed a single astral nova, if their astral novas were shattered, their Yuanfu would shatter as well. If a Heavenly Dipper sovereign condensed a total of 4 astral novas were shattered, their Yuanfu would crumble apart, and their strength would plummet. At this moment, when facing against Qin Wentian, Zongpeng felt as though cracks had appeared on his astral novas. This was a suppression of astral novas. How strong was Qin Wentian's sword astral novas? The spectators in the surroundings also heard that crisp sound. When Qin Wentian took another step forward, the ancient sword strapped on the backs of the spectators all shattered into pieces. The entire space was filled with the keening of swords. Pooh! Zongpeng felt a sweetness in his throat. Finally, he could no longer endure it as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Stay your hand. The elder in the air felt that something was amiss and wanted to stop Qin Wentian. But at this moment, Qin Wentian waved his hand, causing a resplendent sword to descend, slamming into the 4 astral novas in the air. Kacha kacha, the sounds of shattering rang out unceasingly. Zongpeng screamed in agony as he coughed out fresh blood. Glancing at the 4 astral novas in the air, the cracks on them widened as they all shattered into pieces. Even someone as powerful as Zongpeng had his astral novas completely shattered. Peng. A light sound rang out as Zongpeng's body slumped onto the ground, coughing out fresh blood. His countenance was as pale as paper, without the slightest hint of blood. His aura fluctuated wildly, as though he could die at any moment. For astral novas were destroyed, he had become a cripple. Inclining his head, Zongpeng stared at Qin Wentian with great difficulty. The hatred in his eyes towered up to the heavens, akin to the most venomous gaze in the world. He, Zongpeng, had bitterly cultivated for many years and had condensed 4 astral novas. Just when he was at the peak of his cultivation, Qin Wentian had actually shattered his astral novas in front of everyone. You, how venomous! Zongpeng's voice was as cold as the netherworld itself. Qin Wentian laughed. You schemed against me, ruined my reputation, and even challenged me. Now that you have such an ending, you only have yourself to blame. You are not fit to be a member of the Zong clan. At this moment, silence filled the entire space. The hearts of everyone were pounding wildly. They were still in a daze, staring at Zongpeng. Zongpeng's astral novas were shattered by Qin Wentian. Not only that, from the start till the end, Qin Wentian hadn't even unsheathed his sword. Qin Wentian dealt with Zhong Peng as easily as he dealt with Zhong Hong. At this moment, Zhong Hong was sitting on the ground, staring at the scene in front of him with disbelief. That day, Zhong Peng's words made him sigh with regret. Qin Wentian was a narrow-minded person, far inferior to Zhong Peng. In the future, Zhong Peng would definitely seize the position of sword son from Qin Wentian. But now, the truth was laid out before his eyes. At the same cultivation level, Zhong Peng was completely suppressed. This caused Zhong Hong to ponder. Did he do something wrong? Was Zhong Peng really making use of him? That day, Qin Wentian wasn't arrogant at all. At the start, he told Zhong Hong to comprehend the ancient scroll and walk his own path. Qin Wentian's sword Dao was so tyrannical, how could it not be his own path? Now that he thought about it, Zhong Hong felt a sense of inferiority when he looked at that young man. That young man seemed to be even younger than him. Qin Wentian's attainments in the Dao of the sword had already caused everyone to be convinced. But strength was strength. He actually crippled Zhong Peng. No matter what, Zhong Peng was a member of the Zhong clan. He, Qin Wentian, was just an outsider. What made people even more speechless was that earlier, that elder had ordered Qin Wentian to stop. Yet Qin Wentian still destroyed Zhong Peng with a single finger strike. At that time, that elder wanted to save Zhong Peng, but it was already too late. At this moment, he stood in front of Zhong Peng's shattered astral nova, staring down at Qin Wentian with disdain. His gaze was like countless sharp swords, wanting to pierce through Qin Wentian. An intense killing intent gushed forth from him. You. Very good. Seems like I'll have to help the clan lord clean up the clan. That elder's body trembled as his killing intent gushed forth. His aura was many times more tyrannical compared to Zhong Peng. Qin Wentian didn't bother to conceal his gaze as he coldly stated, I wonder if Zhong Peng crippled me earlier, would elder clean up the clan? That elder slowly stepped out. His killing intent was extremely terrifying. Qin Wentian laughed. With a clap of his hands, the sword son's sword materialized in the air. With a wave of his hand, the sword son's sword flew out and hovered in the air. I've angered elder, so elder wanted to kill me. But as the sword son, Zhong Peng offended me, going against his superiors. What's wrong with me crippling him? Qin Wentian laughed. Since this is the case, I'll use the sword son's sword as a witness. I truly want to see how you plan to kill me. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian stepped out, his body floating in the air. He actually wanted to directly oppose an elder. This scene caused the eyes of the surrounding crowd to freeze once again, while their hearts were pounding nonstop. Chapter 408. In the air, sword chi permeated the air. Qin Wentian stared at the Zhong clan elder as a fearsome battle intent gushed forth from him. This person could effortlessly suppress and cripple Zhong Peng, who was at the same level as him. And now he was directly facing the elder. The elder stared at Qin Wentian as he coldly spoke. Good. I truly want to see what capabilities you have. As the sound of his voice faded, a sword-type astral nova manifested, floating above his head. This astral nova contained a terrifying sword might. Numerous sword threads revolved around it, as though each and every one of them was capable of killing. Not only that, the speed of these sword threads was extremely terrifying. They were like beams of light shuttling through the air, akin to dazzling sword light. He stepped towards Qin Wentian. Instantly, the sword threads grew even more resplendent, all of them pointing towards Qin Wentian. It was as though with just a single thought from him, he would be able to kill Qin Wentian. Within Qin Wentian's body, a whistling sound could be heard. In an instant, the sound of a sword keening could be heard as an incomparably resplendent sword of the King Dao floated above his head. This sword was incomparably resplendent. Just a single glance at it was enough to tell that it was a supremely sharp sword. It was as though every part of it was condensed from the essence of swords. The spectators had never seen such a fearsome astral nova before. Not only that, this sword actually exuded the might of kings, as though it wanted to shatter all swords in its path. Is this his astral nova? How powerful! The hearts of the spectators trembled. Even the astral nova of the elder didn't have the same might as Qin Wentian's. In fact, it felt as though his astral nova was being suppressed. Qin Wentian stared at the elder, his countenance cold. The astral nova of the elder was trembling slightly, humming incessantly. Such a scene caused the other party's face to turn pale. He waved his hand, and in an instant, thousands of sword silks turned into the light of the way of the sword, sweeping towards Qin Wentian as if to wrap Qin Wentian within. Qin Wentian's countenance turned cold as he similarly pointed out with his finger. Instantly, his astral nova slashed out, landing between the two of them as the humming of swords echoed out, resembling the cries of demonic beasts. A screen of light manifested, blocking the countless sword strands. Only the astral nova in the middle was able to suppress the sword strands, as though everything was on the verge of stopping. I want to see just how strong you are to accuse my elder without distinguishing right from wrong. Qin Wentian snorted as another rumbling sound echoed out from his body. Instantly, another astral nova appeared. This was none other than his third astral nova. This astral nova was also in the form of an astral soul. It was towering and majestic, resembling an incomparably tyrannical ancient demon. Its demonic chi towered up to the heavens, and as it took a step forward, the entire space around it trembled. What a terrifying demonic chi! The countenances of the crowd turned sluggish. Qin Wentian had just broken through to Heavenly Dipper, yet his two astral novas were already so tyrannical. The pressure they exuded was sufficient to crush the astral novas of others. Go! Qin Wentian pushed out with his palms once more. His terrifying astral nova emitted a draconic roar as the astral nova slashed out. A supreme king might gushed forth, causing the astral nova of that elder to tremble unstably. At this moment, he finally understood why Qin Wentian could shatter Zongpeng's astral nova before he even unsheathed it. This was the suppression of astral novas. Qin Wentian's astral nova was a tier higher than the others. At this moment, in the surroundings, many members of the Zong clan were spectating this battle. Earlier, this elder had arrogantly declared that he would kill Qin Wentian, cleaning up the Zong clan. Now that he was riding a tiger, it was hard for him to dismount. No matter what, he had to win this battle. If not, how could he maintain his prestige as an elder? A terrifying light flashed in his eyes as the astral novas in his body gushed forth one after another. An even more powerful will erupted forth as the two of them clashed head-on. Impudent! A thunderous roar thundered down from the heavens, causing the blood and chi of the spectators to churn wildly. This roar was akin to the sound of thunder, causing their minds to be in a daze for a moment. The aura of battle between Qin Wentian and that elder abruptly dissipated. That terrifying might which had just been condensed from chi dissipated into nothingness under the might of that thunderous roar. In the air, a group of silhouettes walked over. The gazes of the spectators inclined their heads, only to see a group of elders accompanying the Zong clan lord. Clan Lord Zong Yi swept his gaze downwards, landing onto that elder. Clan Lord. Zong Peng made use of Zong Hong to seek guidance from the Sword Sun, and Qin Wen didn't make things difficult for him. In the Zong clan, Zong Hong tarnished the reputation of the Sword Sun, yet you, as an elder, didn't even investigate the truth, wanting to cripple the Sword Sun. I didn't say anything in consideration of your face as an elder, but who would have thought that you didn't know the gravity of the situation, and actually wanted to clean up the Zong clan? Who are you cleaning up the Zong clan for? Although Zong Yi was usually imposing, he had always been gentle in front of others. But at this moment, there was a faint trace of rage in his eyes. Momentarily, the entire space fell silent, as though they were shocked by the aura Zong Yi was exuding. Although that elder wasn't convinced in his heart, he lowered his head and didn't dare to talk back. After all, not only was there a difference in seniority between him and Zong Yi was also the clan lord while he was merely an elder. Zong Peng's heart isn't righteous. Qin Wen's actions are not to be pursued. Also, from today onwards, no one is to interfere with the actions of Sword Sun Qin Wen. Zong Yi coldly spoke, after which he turned to Zong Hong as he continued. Zong Hong, I've always known that your heart is righteous, but your temperament isn't strong enough, making it easy for others to make use of you. From now on, I'll strip you of your identity as the Sword Sun. Go into closed-door seclusion and reflect on your actions. Yes, Clan Lord. Zong Hong bowed to Zong Yi. Earlier, When he saw Qin Wentian's tyrannical strength, he was deeply moved. He knew that from the start, Qin Wentian couldn't be bothered to bother with him. Given Qin Wentian's temperament, he wouldn't even care about Zhong Hong's existence. If not, with his provocations back then, given Qin Wentian's strength, Qin Wentian would have easily killed him with a single palm strike. The matters today shall end here. No one is allowed to pursue this matter. All of you better make your preparations. 5 days from now, the battle for the sword range will begin. Don't only know how to flaunt your might. After speaking, Zhong Yi flicked his sleeves and departed. From the start until the end, he hadn't spoken a single word to Qin Wentian. However, everyone could clearly see that Zhong Yi was extremely trusting of Qin Wentian and was obviously biased towards him. However, Qin Wentian's strength had truly broadened their horizons. He even dared to challenge an elder. At this moment, the spectators couldn't help but to think that if Qin Wentian had participated in the sword range battle, their Zhong clan might have had a chance to win. For this generation of disciples, the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan were both extremely powerful. On the contrary, the Zhong clan's disciples weren't outstanding enough. Although the members of the Zhong clan often consoled themselves, they didn't think too highly of their chances of winning the sword range battle. But now, there seemed to be a ray of hope. Qin Wentian's heart trembled slightly as his astral nova returned to his body, shrinking back into his yuanfu. He glanced at the elder before him before turning and departing the area. It was as though this matter couldn't cause him to waver in the slightest. Count yourself lucky. That elder's countenance turned ashen as he similarly retracted his astral nova. However, he couldn't help but spit out a cold voice, as though if the sect leader didn't appear, Qin Wentian would definitely suffer a calamity. Qin Wentian continued walking away with his back facing him, ignoring him. In order to preserve some face, the other party spat out such words. However, if the two of them truly fought, Qin Wentian knew that the one at a disadvantage would definitely not be him. However, the spectators all had a question in their hearts. If the sect leader didn't appear earlier, who would be the victor? Qin Wentian's astral nova was extremely terrifying, and the elder had an absolute advantage in terms of cultivation base. If they truly fought, the ending would be hard to say. However, the elder with an advantage of 2 levels would have a higher chance of winning. Naturally, there would never be an answer to this question. Qin Wentian is so powerful. Zhong Lian stared at the departing silhouette of Qin Wentian as a brilliant light flashed in her eyes. That battle earlier had truly shocked her. The sect leader truly had good judgment. No wonder he would personally select Qin Wentian as the Sword Son. This matter caused an intense commotion in the Zhong clan. Although Zhongpeng's kin hated Qin Wentian in their hearts, the sect leader had already said that no one dared to pursue him. However, for those who had witnessed the battle, they had already forgotten about the matter of Zhong Hong tarnishing Qin Wentian's reputation. They only remembered the glory of Qin Wentian's battle. That tyrannical battle had left them with an extremely deep impression. Without unsheathing his sword, he crippled Zhong Peng. Facing against an elder, he didn't show any signs of weakness, and actually stepped out to battle. Such a character was truly extraordinary. Many of the younger generations even had feelings of worship for Qin Wentian, and would frequently visit Qin Wentian's residence to seek guidance. Qin Wentian didn't reject anyone, and would chat with them about matters regarding cultivation. These youths would often benefit greatly from their conversations, and when they returned, they would share this information with their elder brothers and elders. For a period of time, Qin Wentian's reputation in the Zhong clan was unrivaled among the younger generations. Such a situation was something that even Qin Wentian himself had never imagined. In the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. Today, in the training grounds of the Zhong clan, several silhouettes gathered. On the tall platform, the clan leader, Zhong Yi, personally stood there, looking down at the people below. The Battle of the Sword Range concerns the rights to mine the sword range for the next 10 years. I hope that this time around, our Zhong clan will be able to obtain victory. Zhong Yi slowly spoke. After which, with a wave of his hand, an ancient sword appeared beneath his feet. Those from the Zhong clan who wish to spectate the Battle of the Sword Range, feel free to proceed. Let's move out. Zhong Yi's voice was indifferent as he stepped onto the ancient sword. Instantly, the ancient sword soared up into the skies, flying towards the horizons. Everyone took out their swords, and for a moment, the entire training grounds were filled with sword qi. Numerous silhouettes soared through the air, creating a magnificent sight. The person at the very front was none other than the clan leader, Zhong Yi. Those beside him were the doyens of the Zhong clan, and a step further behind were the elders. Qin Wentian stood a step behind the elders, leading the way. He stood on the ancient sword with his hands clasped behind his back, exuding an incomparably calm demeanor. The gazes of several people landed on him. Most probably, the crux of this battle would be on the Sword Sun. Outside the Sword Reverence City, a group of people from the Zhong clan soared through the air. In another direction, a towering sword might also appeared. Both parties stared at each other as a formless sword intent converged in the air. The other party was none other than the Li clan, one of the three transcendent powers of the Sword Reverence City. They had arrived as well. The leader of the younger generation of the Li clan was none other than Li Ran. For the battle of the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, he would definitely be the one to act. Behind him, there were several others who were staring at the young men from the Zhong clan with hints of provocation in their eyes. Chapter 409. The person in the lead was none other than the clan lord of the Li clan, Li Jintian. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared in Zhong Yi's direction. He then turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian, who was following closely behind Zhong Yi and the other elders. Is this man the sword son that your Zhong clan chose? As the sound of his voice faded, the other members of the Li clan all turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian. This young man was the closest to the Zhong clan's clan lord Zhong Yi. His status must be extraordinary, and there was a high possibility that he was the sword son chosen by the Zhong clan to participate in the battle for the sword range. Li Ran and Li Nian had met Qin Wentian before. Li Nian spoke. This man is the one who comprehended the way of swords in the Sword Reverence Cliff back then. The last time I met him, he denied that he was invited by the Zhong clan to the Sword Reverence City. So it turns out that he was afraid of death. If it wasn't for Zhong Qian taking out his divine weapon, this man would already be a dead man. Oh. An expression of interest appeared on Li Jintian's face as he coldly laughed. The Zhong clan is getting weaker and weaker. Zhong Yi merely glanced at him, not bothering to retort. Winning the battle for the sword range was the most important thing. Qin Wentian didn't even bother to glance at Li Nian. Back then, if it wasn't for the fact that he was a newcomer and didn't want to bicker with Li Nian wouldn't have appeared here today. Who would have thought that this woman would still be so arrogant even after seeing him? If it wasn't for me sacrificing my divine weapon, the one who died wouldn't be Brother Qin, but you and your genius brother Li Ran instead. Zhong Qian coldly spoke. Right now, who in the Zhong clan didn't know of Qin Wentian's strength? The other members of the Zhong clan all laughed coldly as they stared at Li Nian. Who doesn't know how to spout nonsense? I hope you guys still have the confidence to do so during the battle for the sword range. Li Nian mocked. You're right. Everyone knows how to spout nonsense. The members of my Zhong clan won't argue with you. Let's see if you still have the face to smile when the time comes. Zhong Qian didn't back down as he retorted. In the Sword Reverence City, the three major powers were the hegemons. Because of the battle for the sword range, they were as incompatible as fire and water. Qin Wen is really calm. Those from the Zhong clan glanced at Qin Wentian, as they mused in their hearts that Li Nian would definitely feel as though she had slapped herself in the face during the contest for the sword range. The two forces gradually separated. Not long after, they arrived at the cliff. They flew down and rushed into the cliff. At the bottom of the precipice, in the outer perimeter of the sword range, there was actually a battle platform erected there. The experts from the Heavenly Sword sect stood on one end of the precipice, each of them clad in green robes, and had ancient swords strapped to their backs, exuding an extraordinary aura. When they saw the experts from the Li and Zhong clan arriving, a surge of sword intent gushed forth, permeating the air. Even before the battle began, the sharpness of the sword intent had already been revealed. Those from the Li clan and Zhong clan respectively landed in a different location. The three great powers formed a triangular formation. Li Zhentian and Zhong Yi each took a step forward. In the direction of the Heavenly Sword Sect, the sect leader of the Heavenly Sword Sect, Jian Wuyo, also walked out. He stared at the two of them as he spoke. Two clan leaders, how have you been? Li Zhentian lightly waved his hand as he spoke. Sect leader Wuyo, there's no need to reminisce about the past. The Heavenly Sword Sect has already controlled the rights to the sword range for the next 10 years. The next battle will determine the ownership of the sword range for the next 10 years. Are the rules of the battle still the same as before? The three major powers of the Sword Reverence City were all very powerful, yet none of them could suppress the other two. If not, they would have long started a war to dominate the Sword Reverence City. And precisely because of this balance, the methods used by the three major powers in the contest for the sword range were much gentler. They would use the battles between their disciples to determine the ownership of the sword range for the next 10 years. None of them wanted to break this balance. As for the rules of the previous battles, each of the three major powers would choose 3 participants. The participants could not be above the age of 30, and they were not allowed to borrow the power of divine weapons. 2 would be at the peak of Yuanfu, and 1 would be at the first level of Heavenly Dipper. There would be 3 rounds of battles, and for each round, the participants chosen by the 3 major powers would stand on the battle platform. The one who remained standing at the end would be the victor. For the 3 rounds, if one of the 3 powers obtained 2 victories, they would be able to directly control the sword range for the next 10 years. If each of the 3 powers obtained 1 victory, it would depend on who was the victor in the battle for the Heavenly Dipper realm. Hence, the battle for the Heavenly Dipper realm was the most crucial. In this place, not only the 3 major powers were present. In the faraway regions, atop the precipitous cliffs, many silhouettes could be seen. They would either be alone or in groups, spectating the battle here. The battle between the 3 transcendent powers wasn't a small matter in the Sword Reverence City. Every 10 years, the 3 transcendent powers would do their best to nurture 3 young geniuses. From a certain perspective, this battle could be said to be the pinnacle of all geniuses of the same generation. Let's follow the original rules. Zhong Yi calmly spoke. Those behind him all had smiles on their faces. With the sword Sun Qin Wentian present, the battle for the Heavenly Dipper realm would definitely be theirs. As for the other 2 battles, as long as they didn't lose out to one party, it would be considered a victory. Seems like both the Li and Zhong clan are very confident. The spectators silently mused when they saw Li Zhentian and Zhong Yi expressing their stance. However, according to the rumors, the strongest power should be the Heavenly Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect had produced a few outstanding geniuses that were all extremely powerful. Fine, I will respect the opinions of the 2 clan leaders. Let's follow the old rules. Jian Han, you go for the first battle. Jian Wuyo, the sect leader of the Heavenly Sword Sect, spoke. A moment later, a figure exuding an aura of coldness and sharpness permeated the air, incomparably tyrannical. Li Nian, you go. The clan leader of the Li clan, Li Zhentian, calmly spoke. Momentarily, Li Nian's silhouette flickered as she similarly descended on the stone platform. Zhong Qian, you go first. Zhong Yi ordered. The 3 of them all appeared on the stone platform. This scene caused the spectators to feel bewildered. Jian Han's combat prowess was very high, but Li Nian from the Li clan shouldn't be the best candidate. Wasn't it a little unwise to actually send her out for the first battle? What made the spectators even more bewildered was that Jian Han and Li Nian actually joined forces and made the first move against Zhong Qian. You guys. Zhong Qian's countenance turned cold as he released his astral souls. However, a wave of coldness already bore down on him as a sword light flashed past. Li Nian used her movement technique to seal off Zhong Qian's path of retreat. Her sword flashed as specks of cold light shimmered in the air. Zhong Qian wasn't someone easy to deal with either. With a flick of his finger, a gigantic sword materialized and abruptly slashed towards Jian Han's sword. The might of his sword was akin to that of a mountain, wanting to suppress Jian Han's sword. At the same time, he stood at his original location and blasted out a palm imprint filled with immense might. Puchi! A light sound rang out. The spectators only saw Jian Han tilting his body, ignoring Zhong Qian's sword, allowing his opponent to land a direct hit on his body. However, his ice-cold sword swept towards Zhong Qian's throat. Zhong Qian's life and death depended on a single thought. Retracting his left hand, Zhong Qian clamped down on the tip of Jian Han's sword. At the same time, a palm imprint slammed into his body, instantly ripping apart his robes. The terrifying sword qi directly pierced into his body, causing the countenances of those from the Zhong clan to stiffen. Die. Jian Han and the rest had all comprehended second-level mandates. A sword light akin to flowing water swept past. There was simply no way to block it. Zhong Qian hurriedly retreated, directly off the platform. Only then did he manage to avoid being struck by that sword. Ooh. Drawing in a deep breath, Zhong Qian's countenance turned ashen. Even at the risk of being injured, Jian Han still wanted to blast him off the platform. After which, the spectators only saw the injured Jian Han suppressing Li Nian with overwhelming superiority. Such a scene caused the spectators to feel somewhat bewildered. The Li clan sent Li Nian out, yet Li Nian and Jian Han joined forces to deal with Zhong Qian. This was equivalent to gifting the Heavenly Sword sect a victory. The Li clan has reached an agreement with the Heavenly Sword sect. The countenances of the spectators froze. Zhong Yi had already predicted this. And indeed, for the next battle, the Li clan sent out one of the stronger participants, while the Heavenly Sword sect sent out one of the weaker participants. This already indicated that the Heavenly Sword sect would give the victory to the Li clan. After the battle started, the Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect directly acted against the participants from the Zhong clan, eliminating the participant from the Zhong clan. After which, the Li clan obtained their second victory. The Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect each won one round. Despicable. What a good Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect, to actually use such despicable methods. The members of the Zhong clan were all enraged as they coldly spoke. However, their clan lord Zhong Yi's countenance was calm. He merely glanced at his opponents and stated, "Clan Lord Li and sect leader Jian seem to be having a lot of fun." Jian Wuyo glanced at Zhong Yi, but before he could say anything, a mocking expression appeared on Li Zhentian's face as he interjected. "The members of this generation from the Zhong clan are the weakest. They basically don't have the qualifications to contend for the authority to control the sword range. For the previous two battles, the Zhong clan was directly eliminated. This can be considered as saving face for your Zhong clan. For this battle, the members of the Zhong clan have no qualifications to participate." Li Zhentian's words clearly indicated that he looked down on the members of the younger generation from the Zhong clan. They joined forces not because they feared the Zhong clan, but rather, they felt that the Zhong clan didn't have the qualifications to contend for the authority to control the sword range. As for the Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect, they had absolute confidence in their Heavenly Dipper sword sons. Hence, they decided to bet the authority to control the sword range on the next battle. As for the Zhong clan, they were excluded by the two major powers. Such disregard caused the members of the Zhong clan to be incomparably enraged. The Li clan was too much of a bully. Zhong Yi stared at the arrogant Li Zhentian as calm as ever. The members of this generation from the Zhong clan were truly lacking in comparison. Jian Feng from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li Ran from the Li clan were both extremely powerful. No wonder they were so confident, and wanted to leave the final battle to Li Ran and Jian Feng. Because of the existence of these two, the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan didn't even bother to pay attention to the Zhong clan. If not, they would have already discovered that an extremely powerful sword son had appeared in the Zhong clan. "Jian Feng, it's all up to you now." Jian Wuyo stared at the person behind him. This person was none other than the young man Qin Wentian had sensed back then. Jian Feng, sword son of the Heavenly Sword sect, 29 years of age, first level of Heavenly Dipper, outstanding talent. "Li Ran, decide your battle with him today," Li Zhentian calmly stated. For the next 10 years, the authority to control the sword range absolutely couldn't fall into the hands of the Heavenly Sword sect. Jian Feng and Li Ran both landed on the stone platform in the center. Although there was no aura erupting from them, just by standing there casually, everyone could already feel the sharpness of their swords. It was as though they were swords. Qin Wentian, step out. Zhong Yi from the Zhong clan spoke. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly as he stepped out. At this moment, The gazes of the members of the Zhong clan were all focused on Qin Wentian. Before this, they had all looked down on this young man. But now, upon seeing Qin Wentian stepping out, a surge of hot blood gushed forth from their hearts. The humiliation of the Li clan, the disregard of the Heavenly Sword sect, was right before their eyes. The sword son Qin Wentian would definitely wash away this humiliation for the Zhong clan. Chapter 410. The battle between Qin Wentian and Zhong Peng was witnessed by the members of the Zhong clan. Tyrannical, Qin Wentian didn't even need to use his sword to destroy Zhong Peng's astral nova. Although Li Nian and Jianfeng were much stronger compared to Zhong Peng, could they be the same as Qin Wentian, suppressing Zhong Peng? Right now, the only thing the Zhong clan was worried about was that Li Nian and Jianfeng would use their strongest methods to deal with Qin Wentian. Who is this person? On the precipice, the gazes of several people landed on Qin Wentian. They had never heard of Qin Wentian's name before, but right now, when they saw the members of the Zhong clan, their gazes were filled with fanaticism. It was as though the members of the Zhong clan were extremely confident in this young man. They believed that he would be able to defeat Li Ran and Jianfeng. At this moment, there were also people who recognized Qin Wentian. Back then when Qin Wentian was cultivating his sword, many of them had seen him before. Right now, they couldn't help but to sigh in admiration. So it turned out that this young man was actually a helper invited by the Zhong clan. However, in front of Li Ran and Jianfeng, no matter how powerful this young man was, he could only be a spectator. There was nothing he could do. You actually participated in the battle for the Heavenly Dipper realm? At this moment, in the direction of the Li clan, Li Nian's eyes flashed with astonishment as she stared at Qin Wentian. Li Nian, if it wasn't for Brother Qin not wanting to be calculative with you that day, do you think you would still be here? Zhong Qian coldly snorted. Li Ran's eyes also turned over, landing onto Qin Wentian as a look of disdain could be seen on his face. You can go down yourself. This battle was between him and Jianfeng. He had been anticipating this battle for a long time. Hence, the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan came to an agreement, directly eliminating the Zhong clan. Their victory or defeat would be determined by the battle between Li Ran and Jianfeng. Jianfeng also glanced at Qin Wentian, his countenance incomparably calm. This young man seemed to be the one who cultivated in the cavern on the precipice outside the sword range that night. However, he only casually glanced at him before shifting his gaze back to Li Ran. Just like what Li Ran had thought, this battle had nothing to do with Qin Wentian at all. Of course, it would be best for him to walk on his own. Qin Wentian stood there quietly. Although he had already broken through to the Heavenly Dipper realm, he wouldn't feel any pressure fighting someone on the same level as him. Back then in the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, there were so many geniuses at the peak of Grand Xia, including demon-level geniuses from the various transcendent powers. Yet he didn't fear them all, claiming the top position. And now, in the Sword Reverence City, if it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to help the Zhong clan seize control of the sword range, he wouldn't even have participated in this battle. To him, this battle did not have much meaning. The calm Qin Wentian acted as though he hadn't heard Li Ran's words. Li Ran, who was currently facing off against Jianfeng, frowned as a cold light erupted forth, sweeping towards Qin Wentian. His narrowed eyes gradually turned sharp, and with a shrill whistle, the ancient sword on his back instantly floated in front of him, bringing with it a humming sound as it pointed towards Qin Wentian. You shouldn't have participated in this battle. It's already a mistake for you to do so. Earlier, I gave you a chance, you should have cherished it. This is your second mistake. Li Ran faintly spoke, after which he turned to Jianfeng and continued. You and I won't bully him. Let's see who will be the first to slay this external helper of the Zhong clan. How about it? After hearing this, Jianfeng stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. You aren't his opponent. You can go down by yourself. In the Sword Reverence City, at the same cultivation level, Jianfeng had never met a worthy opponent before. Only Li Ran of the Li clan, whose talent was rumored to be exceedingly outstanding. Back when he was still at Yuanfu, the sect leader of the Heavenly Sword sect had already conferred him the title of Sword Son. Cultivating the sword for so many years, his sword heart was incomparably resolute. He believed that in the sword reverence city, there was no one at the same cultivation level as him who could defeat him. Since you aren't willing to act, I will deal with him first before fighting against you. Li Ran saw that Jian Feng was giving a chance to Qin Wentian, yet he didn't want to give it to him. His palms grasped onto the sword in front of him, and instantly his body straightened up, as straight as a sword as he advanced towards Qin Wentian. Rays of resplendent light radiated from the sword, so bright that the spectators couldn't even open their eyes. His entire sword was as dazzling as the blazing sun. The wind gusted, the light radiated. The spectators only saw Li Ran's silhouette transforming into a beam of sword light. Those with weaker cultivation couldn't help but raise their hands, shielding their eyes. How could Li Ran's sword be so resplendent, like the blazing sun? Sword light flashed, and in that instant, Li Ran's sword slashed downwards. Instantly, an intense light enveloped Qin Wentian's surroundings, and as this intense light flashed past, a bone-piercing chill could be felt in the hearts of those who saw it. Li Ran's sword, slicing the throat with a single strike. It was rumored that Li Ran from the Li clan rarely used his sword because of his pride and disdain. But today in the contest for the sword range he was going to fight against Jian Feng. Hence his sword bloomed in a dazzling manner. Using the sword son of the Zhong clan as a sacrifice to his sword. Although the light was too intense, the spectators still stared ahead, at Qin Wentian, wanting to see Li Ran's life-reaping sword clearly. The lips of those from the Li clan curled up in arrogance. Li Nian even had a look of disdain in her eyes. The moment the sword descended, it would be the moment Qin Wentian died. The spectators only saw Qin Wentian closing his eyes as his sword abruptly unsheathed with the speed of a bolt of lightning. Qin Wentian lifted his hands slightly as the sword landed in his hands. His movements were incomparably light and practiced. He didn't even bother to evade the incoming sword strike. Such a fast sword strike only needed the blink of an eye to claim his life. Li Ran was fast, but so was Qin Wentian. How could his sword not be fast? Qin Wentian's palms trembled as the keening of a sword rang out. It was as though his sword had merely trembled slightly, yet the spectators could already see Qin Wentian being slain by the sword light. Even those from the Zhong clan were stunned. Qin Wentian actually didn't even bother to evade? There was no way he could evade such a sword strike. As the sword light descended, Qin Wentian's silhouette was slashed apart, causing many to be stunned. Those from the Zhong clan felt their bodies turning cold, while the others felt that this was nothing out of the ordinary. Li Nian's lips curled up even higher. MHM. At this moment, a strange scene appeared. They saw an afterimage appearing beside Li Ran. This afterimage elongated and appeared 2 steps behind Li Ran. As for the silhouette of Li Ran's sword light, it had already vanished. What Li Ran slashed at was only an afterimage. This how fast? The crowd drew in a breath of cold air. Li Ran's sword strike had missed. The sword intent dissipated, and the sword light disappeared. Qin Wentian was still standing there with his back facing Li Ran. The spectators were all staring at him, wanting to see if Qin Wentian was injured or not. Li Ran slowly turned around, yet Qin Wentian still hadn't moved an inch. This caused the spectators to sigh. It seemed like Qin Wentian had failed to evade that sword strike. How is this possible? A hoarse voice rang out from Li Ran's mouth. After which, a bloody wound appeared on his throat as fresh blood gushed out unceasingly. In that instant, the gazes of the spectators froze as expressions of terror appeared on their faces. Li Ran's silhouette slowly collapsed onto the ground. The keening of the sword, Qin Wentian died. When sword cultivators clashed, the sword wind was the most dangerous. A single misstep could result in the throat being slashed apart. Li Ran had always been arrogant, wanting Qin Wentian to walk down the platform by himself. Yet his throat was slashed apart by a single sword strike. The sword son of the Li clan had fallen. A wave of coldness enveloped Li Nian's body. She stared at the scene in front of her in shock, as though she didn't dare to believe that this was real. Staring at the silhouette of Qin Wentian, her body couldn't help but tremble. Those from the Li clan all had ashen expressions on their faces. They had reached an agreement with the Heavenly Sword sect because they wanted Li Ran to fight against Jian Feng, seizing control of the sword range. But now, their Li clan had already been eliminated, and they had even lost a sword son. Excellent. Sword son Qin won. The eyes of those from the Zhong clan flickered with a fanatical light. The nervousness and disappointment they felt earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a surge of hot-bloodedness. This sword strike was too magnificent, sweeping away all the humiliation the Zhong clan had suffered earlier, ruthlessly slapping the face of the Li clan. Earlier, the arrogant words spoken by the clan lord of the Li clan, Li Zhentian, rang out in their ears. Li clan lord, don't be too full of yourself. Zhong Yi faintly spoke, his words causing Li Zhentian's eyes to gleam with a terrifying light as he stared at Qin Wentian on the platform. Take care of this. Li Zhentian waved his hands, and a moment later, someone came to collect Li Ran's corpse. The three parties had agreed that in the contest of the sword range, life and death would be determined by fate. Li Ran wanted to kill Qin Wentian first, yet he was killed instead. On the cliff, the spectators all had strange expressions on their faces. It seemed like the Zhong clan had long been prepared for this. The Li clan had initially wanted to fight against the Heavenly Sword sect for the 10 years' worth of control over the sword range. Who would have thought that they would end up benefiting the Zhong clan instead? As long as the Zhong clan won this battle, the control over the sword range would belong to them. The gazes of the spectators shifted back to Qin Wentian, only to see him inclining his head slightly, staring at Jian Feng as he spoke. You get down from the platform. Qin Wentian's voice was extremely calm, without any fluctuations. Earlier, Jian Feng told him to get down, and now, he was returning the same words to him. However, the situation was different now. Before this, everyone felt that there was no need to doubt Jian Feng's words. But now, the situation was reversed. Killing Li Ran with a single sword strike. Although Jian Feng was the one with the highest talent in the Heavenly Sword sect, would he be able to fight against the sword son of the Zhong clan? That day at the bottom of the cliff, the female cultivator who said that Qin Wentian only had a superficial appearance, and that his swordsmanship was weak couldn't help but feel a sense of surrealism in her heart. That was her senior brother Jian Feng, whom she admired. And now, this person whom she had humiliated for having weak swordsmanship actually told her senior brother Jian Feng to get down from the platform. Sword keening, sword shadows appearing. What sword will you comprehend? Jian Feng asked. The sword intent he sensed caused him to feel a chill in his heart. I don't know what other people refer to this as. Maybe it's the will of sword melody. Qin Wentian faintly replied. Jian Feng nodded his head. Sword keening, sword melody, it's indeed suitable. If I insist on fighting against this will, I'm afraid that my ending would be the same as Li Ran's. I'm defeated. As the sound of Jian Feng's voice faded, he turned, ignoring the opinions of others, ignoring the face of the Heavenly Sword sect, and directly walked down the platform, admitting defeat. Was this because he was afraid of death? Was his sword heart not resolute enough? It was precisely because Jian Feng's sword heart was resolute that he could calmly say that if he were to fight, he would die for sure. After which he walked down the platform. Chapter 411. The sword son of the Li clan Li Ran had his throat slit by a single sword. The sword son of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jian Feng, walked down the platform, conceding. The sudden turn of events caused the spectators to feel a little surreal. Today, the Li clan and the Heavenly Sword sect had reached an agreement. The final battle should have been between Li Ran and Jian Feng. Their battle would determine the ownership of the sword range. But the Zhong clan, which was previously disregarded, produced a new generation of sword sons. Using the most domineering manner, he obtained first place in the third battle. Not only that, from the start to the end, he only unleashed a single sword strike. With a single sword strike he obtained first place, seizing control of the sword range. This victory meant that the sword range would belong to the Zhong clan for the next 10 years. The Li clan, Zhong clan and Heavenly Sword sect, each side won. But the Zhong clan was the final victor in the battle between Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. In the end, scheming against oneself. Zhong Yi faintly spoke, his words causing many to sigh as they silently nodded in their hearts. If the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan didn't reach an agreement, and fought for victory in the first two battles, maybe one of them would have a chance to win 2 consecutive battles. but the other two would have no chance at all. However, they were so confident in their own sword sons. Hence, they ignored the Zong clan, wanting to eliminate the Zong clan first. But in the end they helped the Zong clan. Such an ending, nobody would have thought of it. Qin Wentian sheathed his sword as he slowly walked back to the Zong clan's crowd. The gazes of the Zong clan's members were all filled with fanaticism as they stared at him. This was the sword son of the Zong clan. At this moment, it was as though Qin Wentian's surname wasn't even mentioned by them. He had brought glory to the Zong clan. His words were truly beautiful. In front of everyone in the sword reverence city, he had ruthlessly slapped the faces of the Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect. However, Qin Wentian was extremely quiet, as though nothing had happened at all. To him, this battle wasn't too challenging. Even if he won, there was nothing to be proud of. He could just leave the rest to Zhong Yi. There was no need for him to worry. But after he gained control of the sword range, he could freely enter and exit the sword range and properly sense the sword intent of the demon sword. The second level of his mandate of swords was comprehended from the demon sword. Isn't it time for the Heavenly Sword sect to retreat? Zhong Yi calmly spoke. According to the rules, his Zong clan was the victor. In that case, for the next 10 years, his Zong clan would be in control of the sword range. The experts from the Heavenly Sword sect naturally had to retreat. The sect leader of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jian Wuyo, calmly stared at Zhong Yi as a cold smile appeared on his face. This scene caused Zhong Yi to frown. Could it be that the Heavenly Sword sect was going to go back on their words? The three major powers of the Sword Reverence City had maintained a balance of power for far too many years. None of them dared to say that they would be able to devour the other two. And because the three powers were still divided into different levels, two of them wouldn't join forces to annihilate the other two. Once the third party was annihilated, the weaker of the two remaining powers would be in danger. It was precisely because of this that this balance had always been maintained. Brother Zong, there are some things I have to remind you. If it was in the past, if our Zong clan won, the sword range would belong to us for the next 10 years. But today's battle is merely a formality. As for the control of the sword range, Brother Zong can forget about it. Jian Wuyo faintly spoke, his words causing expressions of interest to appear on the faces of the spectators. If the Heavenly Sword sect violated the rules, it would undoubtedly be a provocation to the Zong clan. Sect leader Jian, do you think that the Heavenly Sword sect is so powerful that they can disregard the existence of my Zong clan? Zhong Yi's voice was filled with coldness, yet Jian Wuyo acted as though he didn't hear it. He coldly laughed. It's not my Heavenly Sword sect. There are others who wish to mine the sword range. These people are the esteemed guests of my Heavenly Sword sect. I'm advising you now because it's for the good of Brother Zong. Is that so? In that case, I Zong would like to ask, who is the one who wishes to mine the sword range? Zhong Yi stared at Jian Wuyo calmly. Me. At this moment, a person behind Jian Wuyo spoke. Before this person had been standing at the very back with his eyes closed in meditation, completely unremarkable. Only now did the spectators discover that this person's dressing was completely different from those from the Heavenly Sword sect. He was clad in luxurious golden robes, and an intense sense of arrogance could be seen on his face. His entire person exuded a sense of sharpness. This person walked out and inclined his head slightly, staring at Zhong Yi as he casually stated, "There was originally no need for this battle. It's just that Jian Wuyo wanted to follow the rules set by the previous generations, so I allowed it. But no matter what the ending is, for the next 10 years, the rights to mine the sword range shall still belong to the Heavenly Sword sect. Outsiders are not allowed to interfere." The tone of this luxuriously dressed middle-aged man was filled with arrogance, leaving no room for doubt. The other two major powers of the Sword Reverence City, regardless of the Zong clan or the Li clan, had no qualifications to doubt him. If that's the case, why do you still want to follow the rules set by the previous generations? How laughable. Zhong Yi faintly spoke. Dare I ask who you are? You don't need to know. The middle-aged man continued. As for the battle earlier, it was Jian Wuyo who insisted on sending out the members of his Heavenly Sword sect. If I wanted to lead the battle, it would be a piece of cake. How would you, Sword Son, have a chance to win? Is that so? Zhong Yi countered with a question. Since you put it this way, I Zhong would like to see for myself how the first-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns you sent would be able to defeat the Sword Son of my Zhong clan. If my Zhong clan loses this battle, I will immediately retreat without saying a single word. Not only that, my Zhong clan will gift you with 100,000 fourth-layer Yuan meteor stones. How about it? MHM. Upon hearing Zhong Yi's words, the countenances of the crowd stiffened. What a strong self-confidence. Zhong Yi didn't even inquire about the identity of his opponent. Yet he dared to act so domineeringly. Most probably, he was from a major power that came from outside. But since the middle-aged man said that he could easily lead the battle, Zhong Yi wanted to see who would be able to defeat the Sword Son of the Zhong clan. Those from the Zhong clan were all stunned. Zhong Yi was extremely confident in his Sword Son Qinwen. If they knew that their Sword Son was the top ranker in the Heavenly Fate rankings, and had dominated the demon-level geniuses of Grand Xia when he was at the 9th level of Yuanfu, they would also be as confident as Zhong Yi. Since he was invincible at the same level as him during the Heavenly Fate rankings, who would be able to defeat him now that he was at the first level of Heavenly Dipper? The middle-aged man furrowed his brows. He was the one who spoke first. Yet Zhong Yi made use of his words to issue a challenge. Not only that, Zhong Yi also offered such a huge bet. If he didn't accept it, it would undoubtedly be akin to smacking his own face. 100,000 Yuan meteor stones, what a huge bet. The middle-aged man coldly laughed. Since this is the case, I will accept it. What would happen if your subordinate is defeated? Zhong Yi didn't show any signs of anger. He was extremely calm. Defeated? The middle-aged man had never imagined that in the Sword Reverence City, with a cultivation base at the first level of Heavenly Dipper, there would be someone who could defeat the Heavens Chosen of the Wang clan, Wang Ju. Although Wang Ju was defeated in the Heavenly Fate rankings and had encountered many demon-level geniuses, it was still undeniable that he was extremely powerful. After stepping into Heavenly Dipper, he was still a target to be nurtured. How could there be anyone in the Sword Reverence City who could be his opponent? If the middle-aged man had gone to the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia to witness the ranking battle of the Heavenly Fate rankings, he wouldn't have thought this way. Right now, the situation in Grand Xia was extremely chaotic. The Venerate Heavens sect had spread word that the fate of Grand Xia was changing. Hence, the Wang clan had no choice but to make preparations. Hence, they came to the Sword Reverence City, which was located extremely far away from the war continent. They were prepared to excavate the sword range, and at the same time, try their best to see if they could bring the mysterious demon sword away with them. If my subordinate is defeated, he will no longer touch the sword range and will leave immediately. Also, gift me 100,000 Yuan meteor stones. The middle-aged man coldly laughed. 100,000 Yuan meteor stones was definitely an astronomical sum. Since the other party wanted to gift it to him, why wouldn't he accept it? Not only that, there was no need for him to hand over the 100,000 Yuan meteor stones to the Wang clan. This was precisely the reason why he agreed to this battle. If not, he wouldn't even bother with Zhong Yi. Immediately head to the Heavenly Sword sect and summon the descendants of my Wang clan. We will excavate the sword range in advance. The middle-aged man faintly spoke. Jian Wuyo nodded his head and turned his head to instruct one of his subordinates. Momentarily, the silhouette of that person soared through the air, instantly flying towards the direction of the Sword Reverence City. Upon seeing this scene, the spectators didn't depart but chose to wait patiently instead. They also wanted to see who this imposing middle-aged man was exactly. To think that even the Heavenly Sword sect would bow their heads in submission to him. Those from the Zhong clan were all extremely nervous. 100,000 fourth-layer Yuan meteor stones. This sum was simply too terrifying. Clan Lord Zhong, he had actually placed so much pressure on the Sword Son. How could they not feel a sense of suffocation in their hearts? But if their Zhong clan retreated just like that, where would they put their face? For the sake of face, for the sake of the sword range, Clan Lord Zhong Yi would make such a decision. Now it all depended on Qin Wentian. The spectators waited for a period of time. Above the precipice, whistling sounds could be heard as a terrifyingly sharp intent gushed over. Inclining their heads, they saw another group of terrifying experts descending upon the precipice. These people weren't all riding on flying swords. They were all using various innate techniques and stopped in the air. Their sharp gazes turned downwards, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble in fear. These young men all have gazes as sharp as blades. They are all extraordinary characters, and any one of them exudes a fearsome aura, giving off a feeling of invincibility. As for those elders, just a single glance from them is enough to pierce through the minds of the spectators. The hearts of the spectators pounded as they descended. The middle-aged man in luxurious robes had an arrogant smile on his face as he stared at Zhong Yi. Daring to gamble with my Wang clan? Zhong clan of the Sword Reverent City, I truly admire your courage. Wang clan. Expressions of contemplation appeared on the faces of the spectators. Abruptly, a terrifying light gleamed in their eyes. The Sword Reverent City was located in the central region of Grand Xia, and the closest city to it was none other than the War Continent. Claiming to be from the Wang clan, such an arrogant power, it could only be the Wang clan of the War Continent. A transcendent power. Not only that, it's one of the 9 strongest transcendent powers. The hearts of the spectators trembled. No wonder this man was so arrogant. If the Zhong clan wanted to gamble with the Wang clan, how could they not lose? Those from the Zhong clan felt their hearts trembling as their countenances turned pale. They had all thought that a powerful power had arrived, but they didn't expect that this power would be the Wang clan of the War Continent. Chapter 412. A year ago, in Ginkgu, in the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, although no one from the Sword Reverence City participated in the ranking battle, they had all heard of the results of the battle. A Heaven's Chosen, Qin Wentian, appeared out of nowhere, defeating the demon-level genius of the Great Solar Chen clan, Chen Wang, as well as the Dark Horse Si Qiong. He even killed the Heaven's Chosen of the Pill Emperor Hall, Zhan Chen, becoming the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Qin Wentian used his fame as the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings to tell the world that he and Mo Qingqing were a match made in heaven. This year's Heavenly Fate rankings battle was known as the strongest in 1,000 years. Wang Ju, who was once ranked number 6 on the Heavenly Fate ranking, didn't even manage to enter the top 10. However, it couldn't be said that Wang Ju's strength was lacking. It was just that the Heavenly Fate rankings this time around were simply too strong. After the Heavenly Fate rankings, those ranked at the top all broke through to Heavenly Dipper. Wang Ju of the War Continent was no exception. As a Heaven's Chosen of the Wang clan, one could very well imagine how strong his combat prowess was. If he were to enter the Sword Reverence City in the future, he would definitely be able to dominate everyone. Moreover, what kind of power is the Wang family of War State? Even if Wang Ju doesn't come out, the other Heavenly Dipper Realm first stage people will not be weak? And at this moment, outside the Sword Reverence City, the sect leader of the Zhong clan, Zhong Yi, actually issued a wager of 100,000 yuan meteor stones to the Wang clan. Wang Ju. The middle-aged man lifted his head and looked at a young man in the air. Wang Ju, it's really Wang Ju. The countenances of those from the Zhong clan all turned incredibly unsightly to behold. As for those from the Heavenly Sword sect, they were still laughing coldly. The sword son of the Zhong clan from the Sword Reverence City actually issued a bet of 100,000 yuan meteor stones to our Wang clan. You go and tell him, there's always a sky beyond a sky. The middle-aged man in luxurious robes spoke. Wang Ju's countenance was calm. He heard that there were demon swords in this place, and thus decided to come here to take a look. He wanted to see if there was anything special about this sword range. Qin Wentian would always remember his defeat in the Heavenly Fate rankings, constantly reminding himself that he had to grow stronger. And now, there was actually a major power challenging him in the Sword Reverence City. This caused a cold light to flicker in his eyes. Since Wang Ju is here, I think Brother Zhong should just give up the sword range and hand over the Yuan meteor stones before leaving this place. Zhong Yi's countenance was as calm as ever. He wasn't worried about the outcome of this battle. What he was thinking in his heart was that his opponent was someone from the Wang clan of the War Continent. Even if they won this battle, would they give up on the sword range? I'm afraid it'll be difficult. Looking at the Wang family's current situation, it seemed like they wouldn't rest until they obtained the sword range. I Zhong, I'm willing to take a step back and forget about this battle. My Zong clan will work together with the Wang clan to mine the sword range. In addition, I will pay half of the promised yuan meteor stones. How about it? Zong Yi contemplated for a moment before he spoke, taking a step back. However, the other party wouldn't think this way. The middle-aged man coldly laughed. Now that you know you're no match for me, you want to regret your decision? How laughable. Where is the sword son of the Zong clan? Qin Wentian was currently among the crowd of people from the Zong clan. He left the ancient kingdom and came to the Sword Reverence City because he didn't want to be discovered. But who would have thought that he would actually encounter people from the Zong clan here? However, at this moment, since they had already met, there was no point in running away, only to see his silhouette slowly walking out, and in an instant he landed on the stone platform. Staring at his back view, the members of the Zong clan couldn't help but sigh silently. Although Qin Wentian had defeated the sword son of the Li clan and the Heavenly Sword sect, it would be extremely difficult for him to defeat Wang Ju of the Wang clan. At this moment, Qin Wentian stood with his hands clasped behind his back as he slowly inclined his head, staring at Wang Ju. Instantly, Wang Ju's countenance flickered with a terrifying sharpness, while Wang Xiao, who was standing behind him, radiated a sharpness as well. It's him. Wang Ju had never imagined that he would encounter Qin Wentian here. The sword son of the Sword Reverence City? This identity was truly well disguised. A few months ago, Ouyang Guangxing had returned to the Ouyang aristocrat clan, while Bai Qing had returned to the Mystic Moon sect. This incident had shocked the various transcendent powers. The Great Solar Chen clan and the other transcendent powers of Ginkgo were still encircling the ancient kingdom. Yet Qin Wentian had actually left. This was akin to a slap to the face of the Great Solar Chen clan. Because of this, the Great Solar Chen clan was infuriated, and had even issued an order to capture Qin Wentian. How would they be able to find him? Wang Ju stood at his original location, not stepping onto the platform. Although he was extremely confident in his own strength, he had to admit that he didn't have the ability to win against someone who had once fought in the Heavenly Fate rankings. The battle between Qin Wentian, Chen Wang and Si Qiong was still vivid in his mind. Qin Wentian's combat prowess had no weaknesses. Now that he had stepped into Heavenly Dipper, how strong would he be? Most probably, the astral war beasts he could summon would be able to dominate opponents at the same level as him. Wang Ju. The middle-aged man inclined his head, calling out to Wang Ju, who was still standing in the air. Those from the Heavenly Sword sect and Zong clan were all bewildered. This Wang Ju was staring at Qin Wentian, yet he didn't move an inch. In his eyes, an intense fear could be seen. A mere Zong clan from the Sword Reverence City, what qualifications do they have to negotiate with my Wang clan? Let alone a battle. Uncle, tell them to scram. Wang Xiao didn't want Wang Ju to feel awkward as he spoke. The middle-aged man frowned. He didn't understand. 100,000 yuan meteor stones were delivered to my doorstep. How can I refuse? That's right, this Zong clan doesn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Honorable nephew Wang Ju should teach brother Zong how to conduct himself. Jian Wuyo coldly laughed. However, he only saw Wang Ju coldly glancing at him, causing a strange expression to appear on Jian Wuyo's face. There seemed to be something wrong with Wang Ju's gaze. Shifting his gaze over, Wang Ju stared at Qin Wentian as he coldly stated, "The Chen clan is searching for you everywhere. What would they do if they knew you were here?" Chem. Upon hearing Wang Ju's words, the eyes of the crowd froze. Wang Ju was actually acquainted with the sword son of the Zong clan? Fight or not? Qin Wentian inclined his head, his gaze as sharp as a sword, landing on Wang Ju. That gaze caused Wang Ju's heart to tremble. Back then, during the ranking battle, on the Vermilion Bird Arena platform, this was the same gaze he used to kill Zhang Qin, defeat Chen Wang and Si Qiong. Wang Ju didn't reply. The middle-aged man's brows furrowed even more tightly as he asked, "Who is this person?" Qin Wentian. Wang Ju stared at Qin Wentian as he spat out these three words. Momentarily, the middle-aged man's countenance stiffened as a terrifying light flickered in his eyes. Number 1 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian? The countenances of those from the Zong clan stiffened. Could it be that the Sword Son's real name wasn't Qin Wentian? But Qin Wentian? Some of the more knowledgeable ones involuntarily exclaimed. Last year, the one who defeated Chen Wang from the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. The top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, Qin Wentian. As the sound of this voice faded, the crowd inclined their heads and stared at the silhouette of the young man standing on the stone platform. Their countenances stiffened. This Qin Wentian. Was that Qin Wentian? He was the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings? And when they glanced at Wang Ju, he didn't even dare to take half a step forward upon seeing Qin Wentian. Those from the Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect were all dumbfounded. No wonder Zhong Yi was so confident he was actually Qin Wentian. This man had once dominated the Heavenly Fate rankings with no opponents at the same cultivation level as him. The gazes of those from the Zhong clan burned with passion as they stared at the back view of Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian merely stood there casually, yet the heavens chosen from the Wang clan of the War Continent didn't even dare to take a single step forward. Even if you were a heavens chosen, you didn't even have the courage to fight. Because if you fought, you would definitely lose. The top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings has actually been in my Zhong clan all this time, and I actually didn't know him. A young man from the Zhong clan side, his countenance filled with excitement. He had never imagined that he would be able to come into contact with the legendary top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. At this moment, Qin Wentian's silhouette seemed to grow taller and taller. Just by standing there, he was akin to a legend. He was the same as Hua Taishu back then, standing at the peak of Yuanfu, the pinnacle of Grand Xia. This person actually appeared in the Zhong clan, becoming the sword son of the Zhong clan. You already knew? The middle-aged man stared at Zhong Yi, his countenance cold. I'm only asking you this. Does the bet still count? Zhong Yi didn't reply. Since Qin Wentian had already stepped out, it didn't matter if he replied or not. The him now, instead, was domineering as he stared at the middle-aged man. If I say it counts, do you dare to accept it? The middle-aged man stared at Zhong Yi. Accept. Zhong Yi calmly stared back at the middle-aged man. Are you sure? The middle-aged man asked again. His tone had already turned exceptionally cold. I'm sure. Zhong Yi's countenance was as calm as ever as he calmly replied. At this instant, the middle-aged man laughed as he waved his hands. Very well, since you accept it, I shall gift this sword range to you. In addition, I will send someone to the War Continent to prepare 100,000 yuan meteor stones. Just you wait. As the sound of his voice faded, the silhouette of the middle-aged man soared through the air, directly departing the area. Those from the Wang clan of the War Continent all followed suit. Jian Wuyo coldly laughed as he glanced at Zhong Yi. Brother Zhong's decision this time around isn't very wise. Let's hope that your Zhong clan will be able to obtain this sword range. As the sound of his voice faded, those from the Heavenly Sword sect also departed. Those from the Li clan all had expressions of schadenfreude on their faces. Seems like there would be a good show to watch in the Sword Reverence City. Very swiftly, only those from the Zhong clan remained at the bottom of the precipice. The Heavenly Sword sect had actually evacuated the guards of the sword range. However, they all understood that this was only temporary. How could the transcendent power, the Wang clan, give up so easily? Leaving aside the 100,000 yuan meteor stones and the sword range, even the safety of their Zhong clan would have to be reconsidered. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. The Wang clan didn't dare to make a move because they weren't strong enough. Not only that, the Wang clan knew that he had the divine steel in his possession during the Heavenly Fate rankings. With the divine steel in his hands, the Wang clan would definitely feel trepidation in their hearts. After all, that was the complete divine steel. However, the Wang clan didn't say a single word about it and directly departed. Naturally, they were heading to the War Continent to mobilize their experts. They couldn't stay in the Sword Reverence City any longer. Qin Wentian also didn't expect that he would encounter the Wang clan here. Turning back, Qin Wentian walked to the side of Zhong Yi as he spoke. I've implicated Uncle Zhong. Since I've already made up my mind, why should I be afraid of the consequences? Zhong Yi lightly spoke, patting Qin Wentian on his shoulder as he smiled. My blood is still boiling. Qin Wentian felt his heart heating up as a smile appeared on his face. After which, Zhong Yi turned and stared at the members of the Zhong clan as he commanded. Immediately return to the clan and hold a clan meeting. Since they had already thought of the consequences, the Zhong clan naturally had to make the necessary preparations. Everyone nodded their heads as they cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian. After which, their silhouettes flickered as they departed the area. That very day, the youths of the Zhong clan, as well as the weaker females and children, all left the Sword Reverence City through the teleportation array. Only then did the members of the Zhong clan discover that there was actually a teleportation array hidden in the Zhong clan. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. The Zhong clan was one of the hidden branches of the Azure Emperor. They would naturally leave a path of retreat for themselves. This teleportation array was something they had paid a huge price to hire a grandmaster, who was proficient in spatial divine inscriptions to create. In a single day, the Zhong clan left behind those who had the strength to fight. At the same time, they destroyed the teleportation array, cutting off any path of escape. After which, they set off for the sword range during the night. Evidently, the Zhong clan was prepared to give up on the Sword Reverence City. Their ruthless methods caused Qin Wentian to sigh in admiration at Zhong Yi's boldness. Chapter 413. Night. At the bottom of the precipice, the sword range was completely silent. A group of silhouettes stared at the demon sword embedded in the center of the sword range. It was unknown when someone would be able to pull the demon sword out. Let's begin. Directly destroy the sword range and search for the sword. Zhong Yi faintly spoke. He was an extremely decisive person and had absolute authority in the Zhong clan. Hence, when Qin Wentian sought him out, he only hesitated for a moment before agreeing to Qin Wentian's request. Joining the Azure Emperor token, he hoped that there would be a day when he would stand at the peak of Grand Xia. The clan leader of the Zhong clan, Zhong Yi, was far more decisive compared to the elders of the White Deer Institute. Right now, since they couldn't stay in the Sword Reverence City any longer, and the Heavenly Sword sect had allied with the Wang clan of the War Continent, they might act against their Zhong clan. In that case, they had to excavate the sword range in the shortest time possible, and there was no need for them to leave a path of retreat behind. The ancient swords unearthed in the sword range were all born from the demon sword. Once these ancient swords were formed, they would emit a sword intent. In the past, because of long-term benefits, the 3 transcendent powers wouldn't destroy the sword range, and would only excavate the ancient swords that were already formed. But this time was different. Since the Wang clan and Heavenly Sword sect were forcing him, what else did he need to worry about? Those from the Zhong clan nodded their heads and instantly entered the sword range. They took out their ancient swords and began to destroy the sword range, searching for the ancient swords. Zhong Yi and Qin Wentian remained at their original location. Qin Wentian spoke. Uncle Zhong, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Sword sect would also try to guess your intentions. If the Wang clan wants to make a move against the Zhong clan, they would definitely pay attention to our movements. I know. Zhong Yi nodded his head. That's why I retreated the members of the Zhong clan within a day, and used the speed of lightning to search for the ancient swords. I only need a single night's time. If they really want to kill their way here, we can only face them head-on. Seems like Uncle Zhong has already considered the various scenarios. Qin Wentian nodded his head. I'll go take a look at the demon sword. Wentian, this sword is too demonic. You must be extremely careful. Don't touch it with your body, and don't let your blood flow onto it. Zhong Yi reminded. He and Qin Wentian advanced together, gradually nearing the 1,000-meter-tall gigantic demon sword. A terrifying sword will permeate the surroundings. In Qin Wentian's perception, there were sounds of swords ringing out. The sounds were like the mournful cries of demons, as though there were ancient swords shooting towards him. He immediately closed his 6 senses, not sensing the sword sounds. If he got any closer, he wouldn't be able to withstand the nothingness of the sword sounds. Finally, Zhong Yi and Qin Wentian stood on top of the demon sword. Staring at the gigantic sword hilt, Qin Wentian spoke. Uncle Zhong, this sword has existed for so many years, everyone in the War Continent knows of its existence. Is it true that no one has ever managed to pull it out? Don't touch the sword. Go ahead and try. Zhong Yi spoke. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he landed on top of the sword hilt. Wrapping his hands around the sword hilt, he abruptly exerted his strength. However, the demon sword simply stood there, not moving an inch. The weight of this sword is beyond your imagination. My Zong clan, Li clan, and Heavenly Sword sect have all tried before, but no one has been able to pull it out. Zong Yi laughed. Not only that, the demonic aspect of this sword is that if you touch the sword hilt, it will drink your blood. Hence, don't touch the sword hilt, and don't let your blood flow onto it. Qin Wentian only tried for a moment before he gave up, distancing himself from the demon sword. Since Zong Yi said this, there was no way he would be able to move the demon sword. At this moment, Zong Yi's brows twitched as he sighed. I didn't expect them to make their move so quickly. I'm really unwilling to accept this. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened. After which Zong Yi spoke, members of the Zong clan gather. As the sound of his voice faded, the members of the Zong clan all gave up on mining the sword range. Their silhouettes flickered as they gathered at Zong Yi's location. Zong Yi stepped out as he soared up into the air. An instant later, the sound of swords whistling could be heard as silhouettes appeared on both sides of the precipice. Upon seeing the appearance of these people, the countenances of those from the Zong clan grew exceedingly unsightly. The rights to mine the sword range belongs to my Zong clan. I wonder why the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan came here at the same time? Zong Yi coldly spoke. So it turned out that these two groups of people were actually from the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan. They came here together, but the Wang clan from the War continent didn't appear. Li Zhentian glanced at the sword range below as he coldly spoke. The Zong clan isn't planning to mine the sword range, but rather, they want to sever the sword range. Zong Yi's countenance turned cold. The Li clan wants to participate in this matter as well? If the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan join forces, there could only be one reason. The Wang clan from the War continent must have made a promise to the Li clan. If not, how would the Li clan dare to act against the Zong clan? Zong Yi had to first consider if he would become the next target. Qin Wentian sighed. The Wang clan from the War continent was extremely decisive. They didn't even give the Zong clan a single day's time, and directly contacted the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan to monitor the movements of the Zong clan. As for why the Wang clan hadn't arrived yet, it was most probably because they feared the power of the divine steel. Hence, they sent the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan to probe the waters first. If he could still unleash the might of the divine steel like before, the Wang clan would have waited for an opportunity to strike. Sadly, the ancient will of the divine steel wasn't that strong, and after the battle back then, it was even weaker. Most probably it was useless now. Hee, those from the Zong clan can leave, but the sword son of the Zong clan has to stay behind. The Heavenly Sword sect's Jian Wuyo spoke, his words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flicker. The Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan directly wanted him. There was no doubt that this was an order from the Wang clan. Zong Yi coldly stared at Jian Wuyo as he icily stated. As long as the Zong clan exists, so does the Sword Sun. Zong Yi, the Zong clan has existed for so many years. Why must you fall into a state of eternal damnation because of a single person? I know that the elites of your Zong clan have all been mobilized, so my Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan will do the same as well. In addition, I'm afraid that there are also people from my side who have arrived in your clan. You better consider this carefully. Jian Wuyo's aura was ice cold as he threatened. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wasn't willing to start a war. If they fought, the Zong clan would be annihilated, but the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan would also suffer heavy losses. This wasn't the ending he wanted. After all, although they had a grudge with the Zong clan, it hadn't reached the point where their entire clan would be annihilated. It was just that the Wang clan was too ruthless. After issuing the order, they actually didn't show themselves and only agreed to act at the most crucial moment. Zong Yi, you don't even think for yourself or for the Zong clan. For the sake of a single sword son, you're willing to cause the annihilation of your entire clan. Is it worth it? Li Zhentian also spoke. Zong Yi coldly laughed. Are you all really willing to pay such a heavy price just because of a single command from the Wang clan? Even if my Zong clan is annihilated, how great would the losses of the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan be? After that, even if the Wang clan excavates the sword range, what does that have to do with you all? I'm afraid it won't be long before the sword reverence city and our three major powers cease to exist. Have you all thought this through clearly? Zhong Yi's voice was concealed within the sword qi, piercing into the hearts of those who heard it. His words truly pierced the hearts of those from the two clans. In truth, the three major powers didn't really wish for a war to break out. This young man must stay behind no matter what. Zhong Yi, if you refuse to give up, we can only fight. The Heavenly Sword Sect's Jian Wuyo spoke. He didn't have Zhong Yi's boldness. It was impossible for him to abandon the Heavenly Sword Sect in the Sword Reverence City. Zhong Yi turned and stared at the crowd as he calmly spoke. Tonight's matter is something I, Zhong Yi, didn't expect, and might implicate the members of my Zhong clan. However, when have the members of my Zhong clan ever feared a battle? I, Zhong Yi, vow that if I have to leave, I will be the last one to leave. Now retreat and protect the Sword Sun. As the sound of his voice faded, over 1,000 experts directly soared up into the air as a terrifying sword intent permeated the air, causing people to feel stifled. Kill! The experts from the Heavenly Sword Sect and Li clan decisively gave the order upon seeing this scene. Since things had already come to this, they could only fight. Powerful sword lights instantly illuminated the darkness of the night. Regardless of the Heavenly Sword Sect or the Li clan, over 1,000 elites were gathered here. When the sword lights slashed out at the same time, it was unknown how terrifying the might behind it was. At this moment, as the members of the Zhong clan soared up into the air, they actually gathered in an orderly fashion. If one were to carefully count them, they would discover that the 81 members of the Zhong clan actually formed a formation that resembled an ancient sword formation. Sword formation. Upon seeing this scene, the crowd instantly understood that this was a sword formation. The members of the sword formation all started revolving as their astral souls, and astral novas erupted forth at the same time. Abruptly, over 10 beams of light slashed down from the sky, as though wanting to steal the light of the heavens and earth. In an instant, the silhouettes of the Zhong clan were directly slashed apart as terrifying sword scars appeared in the air. The Zhong clan's coalescent sword formation uses the doyens as the axes, gathering the strength of the 81 of them into a single sword strike. When it's unleashed, the might it exudes is truly terrifying. Those from the Heavenly Sword Sect and Li clan instantly thought of the ultimate sword formation of the Zhong clan. In the past, they had only heard of it in the legends. Today, this was the first time they had seen the Zhong clan using it. 9 swords linking the heavens. Jian Wuyo roared. His left hand straightened in the air while his right hand rested on his left wrist. Abruptly, a boundless sword might gushed forth from him as the heavenly astral sword pierced through the air. Behind him, 8 silhouettes appeared. These were none other than the 9 heavenly swords of the Heavenly Sword Sect. Gather. Jian Wuyo pointed his finger at the dome of the heavens as the humming of swords filled the air. The other 8 also did the same. 9 swords linked the heavens as a formless sword might slashed downwards. The 9 majestic ancient swords abruptly slashed towards one of the sword formations of the Zhong clan. On the other hand, the Li clan was fighting amongst themselves. Although their individual combat prowess didn't lose out to those from the Zhong clan, under the power of the sword formation, the Zhong clan suffered heavy losses in an instant. The reason why the 3 powers hadn't shredded all pretense of cordiality and started a war was because they all feared each other. They didn't dare to say who had the absolute advantage, and they didn't know what trump cards each other had. This sword formation was able to condense the sword might of 81 people, and it had always been the greatest secret of the Zhong clan. When they cultivated it, they would only do so in the secret grounds of the Zhong clan. There were only rumors that the Zhong clan had this sword formation as their ultimate sword formation, but no one knew how powerful it was. Qin Wentian soon discovered that he was surrounded by over 10 sword formations, revolving in a rhythmic pattern. Although his individual combat prowess was unrivaled among those at the same cultivation level, a sword cultivator's life and death battle was already an extremely dangerous matter. Not to mention, this was a chaotic battle where tens of thousands of swords shot out at the same time. Not good. At this moment, Qin Wentian saw the heavenly sword sect's Jian Wuyo using the 9 heavenly swords to open up a path, killing his way into the sword formation, wanting to destroy it. The Li clan also realized that if they wanted to annihilate the Zong clan, they couldn't allow the power of the sword formation to erupt unceasingly. They had to disrupt the sword formation. The experts of the Li clan joined hands and charged forward, disregarding their own lives. Since the battle had already begun, it was a matter of life and death. Chapter 4:14. Within the sword range, sword qi held unceasingly as a desolate killing intent permeated the air. Some of the cultivators below the precipice felt their hearts trembling when they sensed the bloodthirsty sword might. Who would have thought that on the day the Wang clan arrived, the balance between the 3 major powers of the sword-reverent city would be instantly broken, resulting in such a terrifying battle. Astral light cascaded downwards, landing on the bottom of the precipice. Experts fell unceasingly, leaving only the demon sword in the middle of the sword range, as though it was an eternal existence. It was still embedded deep into the ground, unwilling to break out. Someone once said that this sword was like a demon, a sword with a spirit. No one could pull it out because the demon sword refused to acknowledge its existence. If not, it wouldn't be able to remain here for eternity. In the airspace above the sword range, a group of silhouettes quietly descended. These people calmly watched the battle below, as though it had nothing to do with them. They were naturally the members of the Wang clan. They were like spectators, spectating the battle. Maybe, this was the helplessness of the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan. The Wang clan had clearly arrived, yet they chose not to act. In their eyes, regardless of the Heavenly Sword sect or the Li clan, they were nothing but chess pieces. As for the chess pieces themselves, they were completely insignificant. This sword formation of the Zong clan is truly powerful. To think that it can fight against the combined forces of the 2 clans. The middle-aged man from before stood among the Wang clan as he emotionlessly commented. So what of it? Although the might of the Zong clan's sword formation is powerful, they have also suffered heavy casualties. 9 of their formations have already been broken. The Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan are already on the verge of defeat. Another person coldly spoke. Do we really want to kill Qin Wentian here? There are too many secrets on him. For stellar martial cultivators, the majority of their cultivation secrets are stored within their interspatial rings. If we kill him, we would be able to obtain all of his secrets. Let's take the risk and capture him alive. Don't let things end up like during the ranking battle of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Since this is the case, let's kill him then. At this moment he still hasn't taken out the divine steel. I wonder if it's because he has been guarding against us, or if his divine steel is no longer able to unleash its full might. We will know if we continue watching. In any case, there's no need to rush. The people of the Wang family spoke casually, seeming extremely indifferent. A moment later, the sword formation below was already in chaos, becoming a chaotic battle. The clan lord of the Zong clan, Zong Yi, as well as a few other doyens, stood guard around Qin Wentian, only to see Jian Wuyo and Li Zhentian rushing over and obstructing them. Qin Wentian had no choice but to retreat. The strength of these people was much stronger than him. If they were to seize the opportunity, they could easily kill him with just a few attacks. Qin Wentian had to maintain a certain distance from them. Terrifying demonic qi gushed forth from his body as his astral souls erupted forth, manifesting his astral novas. In the air, a powerful beam of astral light cascaded downwards. Qin Wentian's gaze was fixated on the heavenly dome. Instantly, a beam of astral light illuminated the area as demonic beasts howled. A golden primal ape appeared beside Qin Wentian. The aura of this golden primal ape was actually at the peak of the 2nd level of Heavenly Dipper. After stepping into the Heavenly Dipper realm, he could still summon across realms. After which, the Crimson Blood Thunder Hawk, Silvery Rock, and the other ancient demonic beasts descended from the skies, surrounding Qin Wentian in the center. Many experts moved in the direction of Qin Wentian, as killing intent flashed in their eyes. The Wang clan had specifically stated that Qin Wentian was someone they had to kill. As long as they killed Qin Wentian, the mission this time around would be completed. Their Wang clan would then support their two clans to grow stronger and destroy the Zhong clan. The demonic qi exuding from Qin Wentian towered up into the skies. A pair of wings sprouted out from his back, and his gaze was like that of a demon. His silhouette was like a bolt of lightning as he dashed forward. In the center of his brows, a terrifying demonic eye could be seen. With a single glance, many stellar martial cultivators from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan who were below the Heavenly Dipper realm felt their heads shuddering violently as they fell into a deep slumber. After which, Qin Wentian slammed his palms together as the ancient sword on his back appeared in his hands. Puchi puchi. Fresh blood flowed out from the throats of several silhouettes as they died instantly. These people were all from the younger generation of the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan. The countenances of those from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan froze. The will of the sword melody was actually so terrifying. With the humming of the sword, there was no way for those below the Heavenly Dipper realm to block it. A resplendent sword intent locked onto Qin Wentian as the silhouette of a young man stepped out, breaking through the layers of defenses as he dashed towards Qin Wentian. This young man was none other than the strongest out of the three sword sons of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jianxia. His cultivation base was at the third level of Heavenly Dipper, and even in the entire Heavenly Sword sect, he could be considered one of the more powerful characters. Jianxia's silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages as he brandished his sword, rushing towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's countenance was ice cold. His third eye flashed as the sword in his hand hummed once more. Instantly, the afterimages were destroyed, but Jianxia's true body had already caught up to Qin Wentian, and the sword qi he emitted was even more terrifying than before. At the same time, from the left and right, there were experts rushing over. Although the experts from the Zhong clan had the heart to help, they were being held back by the experts from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan. Those from the Wang clan still stood on the precipice, coldly laughing as they watched this scene. If the divine steel still had its power, Qin Wentian wouldn't have taken it out to save the Zhong clan. But if he himself was in a life and death situation, would he still be able to hide it? But at this moment, the crowd discovered that the direction Qin Wentian was heading in was actually the direction where the demon sword was located. Instantly, he stood on the hilt of the demon sword as he stared at the silhouettes in the surroundings. His entire body was enveloped in layers of demonic armor. The sword son of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jianxia, descended. His eyes gleamed with an evil light as he shot towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian only felt an aura of death gushing forth from his eyes. However, how could his will be suppressed by Jianxia's eye technique? The demon sovereign astral nova and the sword sun astral nova both blasted out at the same time. The demon sovereign astral nova was akin to a terrifying primordial demon, while the sword sun astral nova was akin to the king of swords. When it whistled out, the astral nova floating above Jianxia's head trembled slightly. This was the suppression of the sword sun astral nova. Go! Jianxia pointed out with a finger as his astral nova, akin to the Grim Reaper, collided with the demon sovereign astral nova, while his sword sun astral nova clashed against Qin Wentian's sword sun astral nova. The advantage of Jianxia's astral nova lay in his cultivation base. The higher one's cultivation base was, the more condensed his astral nova would be, and the more terrifying the energy contained within would be. The advantage of Qin Wentian's astral nova lay in itself. His astral nova was formed from a single yuanfu, and was condensed from divine energy. In addition to the advantage of his astral souls, he wasn't the slightest bit weaker when facing Jianxia's sword sun astral nova. Especially the sword sun astral nova. It was akin to an ancient sword of the Tao of Kings. What was even more terrifying was that every inch of the king's sword was condensed from divine energy. When the king's sword sun astral nova shone with a brilliant light, countless sword divine inscriptions appeared on the surface of the king's sword sun astral nova, causing rumbling sounds to echo out as cracks appeared on the surface of Jianxia's sword sun astral nova. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by. Jianxia's silhouette shuttled through the astral nova, rushing towards Qin Wentian. His eyes were incomparably cold, filled with a deathly aura. With a single slash of his sword, a terrifying black-colored sword hatred appeared in the air, descending from the heavens. Qin Wentian stabbed out with his sword. The keening of his sword was akin to the howling of a demonic dragon, blocking Jianxia's attack. In an instant, a terrifying sword might engulf the entire space. Chi-chi, the two swords slashed past each other, emitting a sharp whistling sound. Qin Wentian's palms trembled as his will of the Tao of swords erupted forth. Boundless sword keening reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. Instantly, Jianxia's countenance drastically changed. He only felt that his entire body was being enveloped by swords. Dai. Jianxia was a sword son. His sword was akin to the sword of the Grim Reaper, causing a terrifying vortex to form, enveloping Qin Wentian. Bang. Astral light flashed as Qin Wentian's silhouette directly vanished from sight. This was one of the 9 ultimate arts of Grand Xia, stellar transposition. Jianxia felt an intense sense of danger, but how could he make it in time? The keening of the sword keening rang out beside his ears as his body was instantly pierced by a sword. Fresh blood dripped from his wounds. Qin Wentian waved his palms, causing his blood to flow towards the demon sword. Drip! A light sound rang out, but it caused Jianxia's countenance to be filled with terror. He retreated with explosive speed, but how could he be in time? The demon sword glowed with a blood-red light, and in an instant, Jianxia screamed in agony. The blood in his body frenziedly flowed towards the demon sword, and was instantly devoured by it. In the blink of an eye, his body turned into a shriveled corpse as he fell from the air. He died. Those who surrounded Qin Wentian all had expressions of shock on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian. Initially, they thought that with Jianxia's strength, killing Qin Wentian wouldn't be a problem at all. However, the strongest sword son of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jianxia, actually died in the hands of Qin Wentian. Those from the Zhong clan also felt fear in their hearts when they saw this scene. If Clan Lord Zhong Yi hadn't arrived that day, that elder of the Zhong clan would also have been defeated by Qin Wentian. The top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, Qin Wentian's reputation as a demon-level genius wasn't undeserved. It seemed like Zhong Yi had also placed all his bets on him. As long as he matured, he would definitely be able to lead the Zhong clan to new heights. But at this moment, Qin Wentian was facing an even more terrifying crisis. The people from all 4 directions all surrounded him, as a terrifying killing intent engulfed the heavens and earth, enveloping Qin Wentian. In the air, a group of silhouettes descended. These were none other than the members of the Wang clan. The members of the Wang clan didn't even bother activating the divine steel when they saw that Qin Wentian was in a life-and-death situation. Most probably, the might of the divine steel had already weakened, and Qin Wentian would die without a doubt. Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at the silhouettes in the surroundings as his gaze turned ice-cold. His eyes flickered with a cold light, causing the hearts of those who looked at him to shiver. In his palm, a sword sliced through the air, as a droplet of fresh blood dripped down from it. This scene caused the countenances of countless people to drastically change. Even the clan lord of the Zhong clan, Zhong Yi, had a look of terror on his face when he saw this. Wentian. Zhong Yi's countenance paled. Qin Wentian, what was he doing? Do you want my demonic blood? Qin Wentian stared at the demon sword below him as he drew in a deep breath, preparing himself for the worst-case scenario. As to why he dared to feed his blood to the demon sword, it was because when the sword screeched, the demonic blood in his body would howl as well. The demon sword was thirsting for blood. Abruptly, a resplendent light enveloped it as demonic chi shook the heavens, illuminating the entire area. The demon sword wailed unceasingly. Chapter 415. At the bottom of the precipice, at the sword range, the spectators stared at Qin Wentian, their countenances filled with shock. This young man was actually feeding the sword with his blood. The demon sword was like a demon. If it wanted to drink blood, it would definitely drink all of it until the person died. At this moment, Qin Wentian was incomparably cautious. The reason why he dared to do this was because when the sword wailed, his bloodline would resonate with it. Now he was feeding the sword with his blood. A mysterious sensation enveloped Qin Wentian. It was as though he could feel the sorrow of the demon sword. However, the demon sword didn't continue drinking his blood. The spectators all had expressions of shock on their faces. At this moment, the sword might was extremely terrifying. The mournful wails of the demon sword echoed throughout the heavens and earth. Yet it didn't drink Qin Wentian's blood. Qin Wentian placed both his hands on the hilt of the sword as demonic qi gushed forth from him. He abruptly pulled the sword out, and in an instant, a terrifying rumbling sound echoed out. The sword range trembled as the heavens and earth howled. A fearsome sword might swept across the heavens and earth. Chi-chi. A crisp sound rang out as the demon sword moved. It was pulled out by half a foot. Although it was only half a foot, it caused great waves of shock to surge in the hearts of the spectators. The demon sword had moved. This demon sword seemed to have descended from the heavens, cleaving apart the earth, breaking out of the precipice and giving birth to the sword range. Nobody could move it in the slightest. Today, Qin Wentian, a cultivator at the first level of Heavenly Dipper, caused the demon sword to be pulled out by half a foot. This half a foot was sufficient to shock the entire Sword Reverence City. How is this possible? The three major powers of the Sword Reverence City all had expressions of disbelief on their faces. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. An even more powerful sword might permeated the air. Everyone was surrounded by a terrifying sword might. Kill him. In the air, the countenances of those from the Wang clan changed when they saw this scene. They were worried that there would be another unforeseen event and instantly gave the order to kill Qin Wentian. As soon as he finished speaking, the people surrounding Qin Wentian stepped forward and charged towards Qin Wentian. However, at that moment, Qin Wentian pointed his finger forward. In an instant, there seemed to be an endless amount of sword might gathered together and pierced through the throat. A figure stood stiffly in the air, his face as pale as paper. After that, his body fell from the sky. A single finger, annihilating everything. The others halted their steps, not daring to move forward. Their countenances were filled with shock. Qin Wentian was actually able to borrow the power of the demon sword. Qin Wentian continued to pull out the sword. However, the mournful sound of the sword grew louder, but it did not move, only to see Qin Wentian placing his palms on the body of the demon sword. Instantly, drops of fresh blood dripped onto the body of the demon sword, absorbed by it. The power of the sword grew stronger, and the mournful cry of the sword resounded through the heavens and earth. In the air, outside the precipice, a heavenly phenomenon occurred. The mournful cries of dragons and the cries of phoenixes manifested in the air, illuminating 1,000 miles of land as though it was daytime. Within the Sword Reverence City, countless people stared at the scene outside as their hearts trembled violently. The demon sword, mournful cry, a heavenly phenomenon. At the bottom of the precipice, the crowd all inclined their heads as they stared in shock at this scene. Qin Wentian pulled out the demon sword once again. This time around, the distance between them was 2 feet. How much blood do you want to drink? Qin Wentian stared at the demon sword as he mumbled in a low voice. After that, he inclined his head and stared at those from the Wang clan in the air. His countenance was ice-cold as a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from him. A bone-chilling sword intent gushed forth from his eyes, causing many from the Wang clan to feel a bone-chilling coldness. The Wang clan wishes to kill me. If I don't die, the Wang clan will definitely perish. Each of Qin Wentian's words were as cold as ice. As the sound of his voice faded, he stabbed out with his finger, causing the center of Wang Zhao's brows to be dyed with blood. The countenances of the experts from the Wang clan drastically changed. Qin Wentian stared at Wang Zhu, and similarly, with a single finger strike, the center of Wang Zhu's brows was stained with blood. Wang Zhu's body fell from the air. Wang Zhu had once been ranked within the top 6 of the Heavenly Fate rankings. During the ranking battle, he didn't die in the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. But now he died in the Sword Reverence City, in the hands of Qin Wentian. Because the Wang clan wanted to kill Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's hand still slashed across the body of the demon sword, causing blood to appear. Yet his gaze was as cold as ever. Go! The experts from the Wang clan roared as they soared up into the skies. Qin Wentian pulled out the demon sword, and with a flick of his finger, numerous beams of sword light shot forth, instantly killing several experts from the Wang clan. Retreat! Jian Wuyo from the Heavenly Sword sect felt his heart trembling. He gave the order to retreat, not daring to remain here any longer. Leave, quickly leave. The experts from the Li clan also started to panic. They had to leave this place or death awaited them. Qin Wentian's cold gaze landed on them. Everywhere his gaze passed by, the wailing of the sword intent could be heard, borrowing the might of the demon's sword to reap the lives of those who died. Those from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan fell one after another, causing those from the Zong clan to be completely dumbfounded. Qin Wentian, he was actually able to borrow the might of the demon sword? Retreat quickly. Jian Wuyo from the Heavenly Sword sect howled in rage. Qin Wentian stared at the fleeing experts, his countenance as cold as ever. His other hand was placed on the body of the demon sword, and after which he slowly sliced open a wound. Fresh blood flowed unceasingly into the demon sword, and the mournful wails of the demon sword grew increasingly terrifying as the manifestation of the heavens and earth grew even more dazzling. Qin Wentian pulled out the sword once again. This time around, the sword was raised 5 feet into the air. The earth rumbled as the sword range ruptured, and the precipice trembled violently as a fearsome sword might engulfed the entire world. Heavenly Sword Sect Li clan, you failed to kill me, yet you still wish to retreat. A cold voice rang out, as though it had fused together with the mournful wails of the sword. This was the voice of the sword, and also the voice of Qin Wentian. A cold wind gusted by, causing everyone to feel an extreme chill. Those from the Heavenly Sword sect frantically fled, but at this moment, there were some people beside them who felt a chill on their bodies. They touched their bodies, only to see fresh blood on their bodies. Their countenances instantly paled as they screamed in agony. Numerous silhouettes descended from the precipice. Jian Wuyo felt a deep shock in his heart when he saw this scene. He regretted his actions today. The Li clan was the same. In this short period of time, it was unknown how many experts had fallen, and how many geniuses of their clan had perished in this battle. Those from the Wang clan were the fastest to flee, but similarly, more than half of them had perished. When they rushed out of the precipice, the mournful wails of the sword finally weakened, and the threat they felt was reduced. However, they still continued to flee, not daring to stay any longer. Those from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan also arrived soon after. Their countenances were like dead ashes, as despair filled their hearts. Why was the ending of this battle so tragic? Tonight, the elites of the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan had all been dispatched to the sword range. But now their elites were all annihilated. From now onwards, there would no longer be 3 major powers in the Sword Reverence City. When they thought of this, their hearts were filled with sorrow. At this moment, the people of the Sword Reverence City continued to rush out, and when they saw the scene before them, their hearts trembled with fear. What was going on? The Wang clan and Li clan, as well as the Heavenly Sword sect, all stared at the precipice with deep hatred and trepidation in their eyes. It was as though there was a devil lurking below the precipice. In the air, the mournful wails of dragons and the wails of phoenixes could be heard. This was the manifestation of the mournful wails of the demon sword. Could it be that the experts of the 3 major powers had all perished in the hands of the demon sword? Are all of you satisfied with the ending of this battle? A voice drifted over from the precipice, yet it also seemed to descend from the heavens, fusing together with the mournful wails of the demon sword. What was even more shocking was that at the instant they heard this voice, the remaining experts from the Wang clan, Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect all soared up into the air, as though they were filled with fear. Just a single voice was enough to cause them to be in such a state of panic. This voice, whose voice did it belong to? Who could have such a deterrent force? They also saw that the hands of Jian Wuyo, the sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect, and the patriarch of the Li family, Li Zhentian, were trembling. For people at their level to have their hands trembling in fear, one could imagine what kind of terrifying things they had experienced. Why was the demon sword pulled out by him? The experts from the Wang clan coldly spoke, staring at the experts from the Heavenly Sword sect and Li clan. However, Jian Wuyo and Li Zhentian were also staring at him. Their countenances were similarly cold, as though they didn't think highly of him. For this battle, their elites were all destroyed. Now, would the Wang clan still dare to question them? Who would know that Qin Wentian was the one who pulled out the demon sword? Sir, it was your Wang clan that wanted to deal with Qin Wentian. He pulled out the demon sword, but the one who suffered the most was us. Jian Wuyo's voice was ice-cold. Under the influence of his rage, he actually didn't fear offending the experts from the Wang clan. Upon hearing this voice, the hearts of the people in the surroundings couldn't help but tremble. That voice earlier, was that Qin Wentian's voice? Qin Wentian actually pulled out the demon sword that had remained unmoving for tens of thousands of years? What kind of shocking battle happened tonight exactly? At this moment, at the bottom of the precipice, the sword range was torn apart, as though it would be destroyed at any moment. Qin Wentian gripped the hilt of the demon sword with both his hands. His long hair fluttered in the wind as he stared at the sky, his gaze filled with boundless coldness. He couldn't continue to pull out the demon sword. This sword was too demonic, it wanted to drink his blood dry. Those from the Zhong clan gathered together. At this moment, great waves of shock rose up in their hearts, causing them to feel as though their hearts would explode at any moment. This was too shocking. They had never imagined that something so shocking would happen. Staring at the silhouette wielding the demon sword, it was as though that unmoving demon sword should have belonged to him in the first place. That black-haired young man, when he was still in the Zhong clan, he was calm, tranquil, and didn't reveal his sharpness. Even when Zhong Hong and Zhong Peng provoked him several times, it was as though he didn't hear them at all. But now, they had witnessed the arrogant side of that young man. Was this the magnificence of the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings? Was this the arrogance he displayed on the Heavenly Fate rankings battle platform? What a pity, they had missed out on the ranking battle last year, and didn't have the chance to witness his radiance. At this moment, that young man wielded the demon sword in his hands, as astral light cascaded down on him. He was akin to a supreme monarch, causing them to feel the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. Even the elder who had a grudge with Qin Wentian before felt ashamed of his own inferiority. This young man was as resplendent as the astral river. What qualifications did he have to criticize him? Even the clan leader of the Zhong clan, Zhong Yi, didn't have the qualifications to control such a character. The dragon was hidden in the depths of the Zhong clan. They had to grab hold of this opportunity. When the dragon soared above the 9 heavens, it would be the day when their Zhong clan soared to the skies. Zhong Yi inclined his head, drawing in a deep breath as he spoke. From today onwards, the sword son of the Zhong clan, Qin Wentian, shall command the entire Zhong clan. His authority shall be above the clan leader. Chapter 416. From today onwards, the sword son of the Zhong clan, Qin Wentian, has the authority to command the entire Zhong clan. His authority is above the clan lord. Zhong Yi's words caused the hearts of everyone in the Zhong clan to tremble. Zhong Yi actually handed over the authority to Qin Wentian at this moment. Not only that, Qin Wentian's authority was above that of the clan lord. Was he planning to hand over the life and death of the Zhong clan to Qin Wentian? Staring at the young man, many people were still in a daze. Although they were shocked by Qin Wentian's talent and strength, they had never imagined that the clan lord would hand over the highest authority of the Zhong clan to him. Qin Wentian was also taken aback. He turned his gaze onto Zhong Yi. It seemed like Zhong Yi wanted to take this opportunity to push him up. Now that he had pulled out the demon sword, it was undoubtedly a good opportunity for him to push himself to the front of the Zhong clan. Naturally, Zhong Yi also wanted to tell him that the Zhong clan was willing to swear absolute loyalty to him, the successor of the Azure Emperor. This way, in the future, if he could truly rise up and lead the Azure faction to glory, the Zhong clan would also have a place in his heart. Since he had chosen this path, with Zhong Yi's decisive style of doing things, he might as well do it perfectly and not let him have any ill feelings. Wentian, in the future, the Zhong clan shall be handed over to you. Zhong Yi bowed slightly to Qin Wentian. This scene caused the countenances of the spectators to be filled with shock. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. Since Zhong Yi had already done so, he naturally wouldn't pass on this responsibility to others. In this battle, the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan suffered heavy losses. It would be extremely difficult for them to rise up again. However, to the Wang clan, this isn't a huge blow at all. These people will definitely mobilize experts from the war continent over. Uncle Zong, this sword reverence city cannot be left behind. Qin Wentian slowly spoke. If he wanted to shake a transcendent power, his current strength was still too weak, it was far from enough. Tonight, we shall harvest the entire sword range and retreat from the sword reverence city. Zongyi nodded his head as he stared at Qin Wentian. Wentian, are you able to subdue the demon sword? It's difficult. This sword has drunk my blood. Even though it resonates with me, it still cries out, difficult to tame. Qin Wentian slowly spoke. Lowering his head, his gaze landed on the gigantic demon sword. Both of his hands gushed forth with a terrifying might as he pulled it out. The earth rumbled, the cliffs trembled, and the sword will whiz between heaven and earth. Above the sky, under the starlight, the strange phenomenon was still there. The sound of the sword gave off a mournful feeling. If the sword is like a demon, if it has a spirit, why is it not willing to roar in the 9 heavens? Qin Wentian bowed his head as he spoke to the demon sword. His voice rumbled, fusing together with the mournful wail of the sword, resounding through the heavens and earth. Everyone in the sword reverence city could hear it clearly. At this moment, they already knew that the sword son of the Zong clan was actually the #1 ranker on the heavenly fate rankings, the legendary young man, Qin Wentian. This young man actually wanted to tame the demon sword? The unmoving demon sword had risen because of him. What sort of character was the #1 ranker on the heavenly fate rankings exactly? Many people wanted to see Qin Wentian with their own eyes. But at this moment, the sword will permeated the air, and nobody dared to descend the cliff. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the mournful wail of the demon sword intensified. The strange phenomenon in the skies grew increasingly dazzling, and the mournful wail of the sword was akin to millions of sharp swords whizzing through the air. These millions of sword wails converged together, transforming into an ancient voice that was filled with the vicissitudes of time, hating the heavens for being too low. The deep and ancient voice resounded between the heavens and the earth, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. The demon sword actually spoke in the human language, hating the heavens for being too low, refusing to roar. Demon sword, eternally silent, hating the heavens for being too low. Qin Wentian's heart trembled as he murmured. His voice was still one with the mournful wail of the sword, reverberating through the air. How demonic was this sword? It wasn't that it couldn't move. It was just that it was unwilling. This sword hated the heavens for being too low. What kind of spirit was this? What kind of ancient sword was this? Even those from the Wang clan of the war continent were trembling in fear when they heard the words of the demon sword. They came to the sword reverence city. Other than mining the sword range, they had another important purpose. They wanted to tame the demon sword so that the Wang clan of the war continent could use it. However, as the words of the demon sword rang out, the people from the Wang clan no longer had such thoughts. The demon sword hated the heavens for being too low, let alone the Wang clan. Although the Wang clan was one of the hegemons of the war continent, in the perspective of the entire continent, how could they dare to contend against the heavens? No wonder no one was able to make the demon sword submit in the past millions of years. Even the heavens despised this demon sword. How could a human be able to tame it? Mournful wail, because it hates the heavens for being too low. Qin Wentian murmured, since you are willing to mourn for me, you can rise with me. I will not bring disgrace to you. The mournful wails of the demon sword continued to tremble violently, yet it didn't budge an inch. Qin Wentian could no longer pull the demon sword out. The sword wasn't willing to move. Those from the Zong clan felt their hearts tighten when they saw this scene. But when they discovered that the sword wasn't willing to move, they couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment. Zongyi persuaded. This sword is too demonic, it hates the heavens for being too low. It's only normal that it doesn't want to be drawn out with you. Qin Wentian nodded his head, yet he still felt a sense of melancholy in his heart. It was truly a pity that the sword wasn't willing to be drawn out. The demon sword hasn't moved since the start of time. You can already be considered the first person to pull it out. Zongyi continued, his words causing the countenances of those from the Zong clan to stiffen. Indeed, Qin Wentian had already accomplished something that no one in the past millions of years had been able to do. He was the first person to use his own strength to cause the demon sword to mourn. The demon sword drank his blood but didn't kill him. He was also the first person to pull out the demon sword. He was still so young, yet he was the top ranker on the heavenly fate rankings. His future was filled with boundless radiance. Qin Wentian stood there, the blood in his body seethed unceasingly, as though it wanted to rush out of his body. Clutching the demon sword in his hand, the sword might it exuded gradually dimmed. Finally, the light emitted by the demon sword vanished, and so did the phenomenon. The demon sword no longer wailed as it sank back into a state of silence. This kind of silence seemed to be filled with endless sorrow. Who could understand the sorrow of eternity, hating the heavens for being too low? Who could cause the demon sword to howl through the 9 heavens? On the precipice, the spectators all heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that the demon sword no longer wailed. Luckily, Qin Wentian hadn't managed to pull the demon sword out. If not, given the might of the demon sword, it would be a calamity for them. This demon sword was like a demon. It had a spirit, daring to hate the heavens for being too low. If Qin Wentian could use its power, it would surely shake the entire Grand Xia. However, given the nature of the demon sword, there was no way it would be tamed by others. Although the demon sword only spoke a single sentence, that sentence was sufficient to shake Grand Xia. Hating the heavens for being too low. Time to mine the sword range. Qin Wentian didn't persist on it. Given his current strength, even if he managed to pull the demon sword out, it would be extremely difficult for him to control it. Zhongyi nodded his head. Mine the sword range, and at the same time, retrieve the interspatial rings of those who died. Those from the Zhong clan nodded as they departed. In the earlier battle, too many experts had fallen. The interspatial rings of those who died would surely contain a terrifying amount of wealth. How could they allow them to remain at the bottom of the precipice? Qin Wentian slowly walked down from the demon sword, arriving at Zhongyi's side. Now that the Wang and Li clans and Heavenly Sword sect had suffered great losses, they wouldn't dare to come again. Wentian, what do you plan to do in the future? Zhongyi asked. Qin Wentian had offended several transcendent powers. He naturally knew this. Now that he had handed the Zhong clan over to Qin Wentian, it was still insufficient to contend against the transcendent powers. He didn't know what Qin Wentian planned to do in the future. I'll first take in the hidden faction as my subordinates before gathering them together. If possible, I wish to establish a brand new power. I hope Uncle Zhong will be able to help me. Qin Wentian spoke. The hidden faction of the Azure Emperor wasn't weak, but they still had no way to contend against the transcendent powers. If they split up, they would disperse. If he gathered all the hidden factions together and trained them for a few years, their core strength would definitely not be any weaker than the transcendent powers. The only thing they lacked was their foundation. A foundation that was at the peak of the transcendent powers. To do this, he would need to rely on himself, as well as a group of outstanding geniuses to rise up. They had to be strong enough to contend against the peak powers of the transcendent powers. Qin Wentian naturally understood that this required time. Naturally. Zhongyi nodded. If they're in my hands, being able to witness the rise of the Azure faction in Grand Xia once again, wouldn't that be a blessing? In addition, some of the elders of the clan have already left. If they're still alive, I'm sure their strength would be even stronger than before. I'll go and gather them back. The Zhong clan was the hidden faction of the Azure Emperor. They had existed since the Azure Emperor era, and had developed for thousands of years. Naturally, there would be some outstanding geniuses that appeared. As they grew older, they would roam the continents, pursuing higher cultivation bases. If that's the case, that would naturally be for the best. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded. In truth, he had no idea how strong the hidden faction of the Azure Emperor was now. There was a possibility that some of the major powers had already perished due to the passage of time. For example, the White Deer Institute and the Zhong clan could be considered as having developed better. Naturally, there was also the possibility that some terrifying characters would appear in some of the major powers. Qin Wentian would have to wait for him to find out more. Qin Wentian. At this moment, a voice boomed out from the top of the cliff, entering Qin Wentian's ears. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered. He inclined his head and stared at the air as he coldly spoke. Are the people from the Wang clan still not willing to give up? You borrowed the power of the demon sword, that's your luck. However, you better remember the consequences of your actions today. The voice in the air contained a threatening aura. In addition, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. Since you're in the sword reverence city, you shouldn't know about this, right? Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. From the tone of the voice, it didn't seem to be a good thing. Qin Wentian, on the Heavenly Fate rankings you held hands with Mo Qingcheng, announcing your relationship to the world. I've even heard of it in the War continent. What a pair of immortal companions, causing people to be envious. The people of Granxia are all giving their blessings to the two of you. That expert from the Wang clan seemed to be praising, yet his tone was filled with a sinister coldness. He continued, sadly, the heavens don't grant the wishes of man. Lovers might not be able to be together forever. In the Moon continent, the Pill Emperor Hall has already announced to the 9 prefectures that they're recruiting a husband for Mo Qingcheng. Qin Wentian. Do you think that the Pill Emperor Hall would release Mo Qingcheng just because she wanted to nurture her? If you and Mo Qingcheng become a couple, wouldn't the Pill Emperor Hall have wasted their efforts in nurturing her for nothing? As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian's countenance instantly turned ice cold, as a terrifying light flickered in his eyes. Luohe, she promised Qingcheng that she wouldn't interfere in her matters. Qin Wentian's voice was extremely cold. How laughable. Now that Mo Qingcheng's performance is so outstanding, would her master, Luohe, allow Mo Qingcheng to leave with you? If that's the case, why would she bring her back? Mo Qingcheng's future husband would also have to join the Pill Emperor Hall, but that place isn't a place you can enter. The other party coldly continued. Not only that, I heard that after this matter, Mo Qingcheng caused a huge ruckus in the Pill Emperor Hall, and even wanted to secretly escape. Luohe has already locked her up, and this is the last chance she will give Mo Qingcheng. If Mo Qingcheng dares to reject her, the consequences are not something I can imagine. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath, as a terrifying coldness radiated from him. He had long known that Luohe wouldn't allow him and Mo Qingcheng to be together so easily. But in just a short span of a year, Luohe had already gone back on her word, doing such a thing. Qin Wentian, do you still dare to go to the Moon continent? That voice boomed out, as the middle-aged man departed, leaving behind a cold voice that reverberated in the air. Moon continent, Pill Emperor Hall. Qin Wentian, do you still dare to go? Chapter 417. Qin Wentian's gaze was as sharp as a sword, capable of piercing through the void. The Moon continent, the Pill Emperor Hall. Wentian, he's trying to provoke you. If what he said is true, the Pill Emperor Hall in the Moon continent would surely gather there. It's too dangerous for you to go there. Zhongyi frowned. I know. Qin Wentian nodded. However, I have to go to the Moon continent no matter what. An expression of contemplation flashed in Zhongyi's eyes. After a moment he spoke, let me go with you. Uncle Zhong, you still have to settle things in the Zhong clan. Qin Wentian shook his head. Don't worry, there are still many doyens in the Zhong clan. I'll be worried if you head to the Pill Emperor Hall alone. However, I won't go with you. I'll disguise myself as a passerby and blend in with the crowd. No one would be able to recognize me. Zhongyi spoke. Qin Wentian stared at Zhongyi before he turned and stared at the skies. All of a sudden he laughed uproariously. Fine, Uncle Zhong. Since you've put it this way, you can come with me. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he landed on the demon sword. Staring at the demon sword, Qin Wentian directly sliced open the skin of his finger. After which, he abruptly sliced open the body of the demon sword. Instantly, fresh blood dripped onto the body of the demon sword, and was absorbed by it. Wentian, what are you doing? Zhongyi's countenance drastically changed. Qin Wentian was actually feeding his blood to the demon sword again. I'm going to unsheath the sword. Qin Wentian's voice was ice cold. He closed his eyes as his blood flowed unceasingly into the demon's sword. Instantly, the demon's sword let out a mournful wail as a beam of sword light shot up into the skies. Within his body, beside the candlelight, the golden strands of blood flowed together with his demonic bloodline, entering the demon's sword. Instantly, the mournful wails of the demon's sword grew even more terrifying as another phenomenon manifested in the skies. On the precipice, the people of the sword-reverent city initially wanted to leave. Yet at this moment, a terrifying sword intent gushed forth as another phenomenon manifested in the skies. Their hearts pounded once again. What exactly was going on? Buzz! A beam of sword light shot up into the sky, resplendent and boundless. This entire space was enveloped by the sound of the sword whistling, as though it would never stop. They could only feel the cold wind of the sword hanging around them, so cold. At the bottom of the cliff, Qin Wentian stared at the giant sword. His eyes were filled with terrifying tenacity as he said, "You hate the sky for being too low and refuse to roar in the 9 heavens. You hate me for being weak and wailing incessantly. However, even though I am weak today, I have the ambition to break the sky." Qin Wentian's voice was solemn, and his voice melted into the sword qi. His words echoed between heaven and earth. He was communicating with the sword. Qin Wentian refused to give up. Earlier, the person from the Wang clan had used Mo Qingqing to provoke Qin Wentian. His countenance changed as he stared at the phenomenon occurring in the surroundings. He then coldly laughed. The demon sword hates the fact that the heavens are too low and refuses to come out. How can he pull it out? If he enters the moon continent, he would surely be trapped. However, Qin Wentian naturally wouldn't be able to hear his voice. He could sense the arrogance of the demon sword, as well as the mournful wailing of the sword. His heart, his bloodline would resonate with it. The mournful wailing of the demon sword was because it hated the heavens for being too low, hated the fact that it had no master to serve it. Qin Wentian could sense its emotions. And at this moment, after hearing his words, the mournful wailing of the sword grew even louder. "If you have the ambition to break the heavens, then follow me out of the earth." Qin Wentian's voice was solemn, as though he was conversing with the primordial era. His blood unceasingly flowed onto the blade of the sword, yet there was no expression on his face. It was as though even if his blood was sucked dry, he still wanted to pull the sword out. A humming sound rang out as the blood in Qin Wentian's body trembled. Both his hands were placed on the hilt of the sword, and with a howl of rage, he gathered all the strength in his body into his palms as he abruptly pulled the sword out. Rumble! The heavens and earth trembled as the sound of 1,000,000 swords resonated in unison. "It's moving!" The countenances of Zhong Yi and the others from the Zhong clan changed. The demon sword had moved. Bang! The sword range collapsed, the cliff shattered, and the demon sword emerged from the earth. A supreme sword might gushed forth from the bottom of the cliff, shooting up into the skies. A beam of sword light pierced through the layers of clouds, as though the heavens were about to be split apart. Rise, the demon sword is about to emerge. Towering waves of emotions rose up in Zhong Yi's heart. Qin Wentian, if he didn't pull out the demon sword today, he would never rest. Teak! The demon sword was slowly pulled out, and finally, when the tip of the sword appeared, a terrifying tempest manifested in this entire space. Those from the Zhong clan hurriedly retreated. Their countenances were all filled with terror. The streaks of sword light slashed at the cliff, causing terrifying cracks to appear on the cliff. It was as if the cliff had been slashed apart at the waist. Countless beams of sword light converged together. The cylindrical beam transformed into a beam of azure light, competing with the heavens in terms of splendor. The countless silhouettes on the cliff felt as though they could hear the sound of their own hearts pounding. They inclined their heads and stared at the sky. The sword light pierced through the clouds, as though a black hole had been opened up in the sky. The sword wailed in agony. It hated the heavens for being too low. Rumble! The earth seemed to sink downwards, as though the cliff had been sliced apart. Under the pressure of the sword intent, there were even some who prostrated themselves on the ground, prostrating themselves in worship of this supreme sword might. The demon sword had remained unmoving for tens of thousands of years, but when it moved, it shook the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian's entire body was drenched in sweat and blood. He pulled out the demon sword. His palms were dyed red with his blood. Using all his strength, he inclined his head and advanced forward, slowly rising up into the air. The demon sword rose up as well. You hate the heavens for being too low. Although you have a supreme sword might, you are unwilling to be used by me. Qin Wentian's voice fused with the sound of the heavens and earth, penetrating through the void. Today, I'm lowly and lowly, but who knows if I won't be able to ascend to the heavens in the future. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the sky, his eyes flashing with an incomparably intense obsession. The Pill Emperor Hall and Luo he had broken their promise. Why? Today, they were lowly and lowly, offending the heavens of Grand Xia. Rise! Qin Wentian howled in madness. His body slowly rose up into the air. The muscles in his body were all stretched taut, as energy erupted forth from every single part of his body. Millions upon millions of sword intents revolved around him as he pulled out the demon sword. The demon sword followed him out of the ground, soaring up into the air, wanting to exit the cliff. The experts from the Wang clan, Li clan and Heavenly Sword sect all felt this terrifying scene. Their hearts trembled as their bodies trembled. That expert who tried to provoke Qin Wentian paled. He had never imagined that Qin Wentian would pull out the demon sword because of his words. Not only that, if he didn't pull out the demon sword, he wouldn't be human. Will the demon sword follow him and appear in Grand Xia? The expert from the Wang clan asked himself. He could clearly sense that Qin Wentian was ascending, bringing the demon sword with him. Go, let's go. The sect leader of the Heavenly Sword sect, Jian Wuyo, suddenly sobered up as he roared. Momentarily, the experts from the Heavenly Sword sect all flickered, preparing to depart. The cry of the sword, where can life be found? A voice rang out from the depths of the cliff, as well as from the sword intents that filled the air. Abruptly, countless sharp swords pierced through the air, aiming for the experts from the Heavenly Sword sect. The experts from the Heavenly Sword sect turned their heads, only to see millions upon millions of sword intents descending from the skies, blotting out the sun. Where can I meet life? The sword had already sounded. Qin Wentian's killing intent was born. Jian Wuyo's entire body was enveloped by boundless sword light. His astral nova appeared, enveloping his entire body. His feet stepped on the gigantic sword as he soared up into the sky, transforming into a beam of sword chi. Puchi puchi. As the sword fell, the shadows disappeared. In an instant, it was unknown how many experts had turned into ashes. A blood-curdling scream rang out from afar. Jian Wuyo transformed into a beam of light. The swords surrounding him had all been destroyed. Even his astral nova was shattered, and one of his arms was severed. Fresh blood flowed freely from his wounds. However, he didn't dare to turn back and fled frantically. Everyone looked at the background. This scene would never be forgotten for the rest of their lives. Those from the Li clan and Wang clan also understood what the current situation was. Earlier, they were still immersed in shock and didn't expect that Qin Wentian would be able to pull out the demon sword again. They seemed to have forgotten that the moment the demon sword was pulled out, the first target Qin Wentian would kill was none other than them. Go! Li Jintian roared. Those from the Wang clan also fled. Yet the sword whistled over, leaving behind a trail of blood. The strength of that expert from the Wang clan was extremely high, yet the sword intent that was flying towards him was all aimed at him. Die! A cold voice rang out in his heart. Instantly, the keening of a sword could be heard as a trail of blood appeared on his body. His body continued rushing forwards, yet his gaze gradually turned sluggish. Before his death, boundless regret and hatred flooded his heart. Why did he have to use Mo Qingqing's name to provoke Qin Wentian? At the precipice, the gazes of everyone were focused on a young man that resembled a demon. He slowly ascended upwards until he reached a height of 1,000 meters. Below him, the true form of the demon sword could finally be seen. Boom! Qin Wentian's body slammed onto the ground as he coughed out fresh blood. However, his hands were still tightly gripping onto the hilt of the demon sword, unwilling to let go. The spectators discovered that Qin Wentian's palms were no longer the palms of a human, but the palms of an incomparably gigantic demon. His palms directly covered the area around the sword hilt, as a terrifying determination could be seen flickering in his eyes. Since you aren't willing to let me control you, I shall accompany you for 100,000 miles. I shall let you see that my obsession is worthy enough to slash apart the heavens. Qin Wentian seemed to be conversing with the demon sword. He held onto the demon sword as he advanced forward step by step. The demon sword slid across the ground, leaving deep sword scars in its wake, as though the earth itself had been split apart by a single sword strike. Those in front of him all stepped aside, nobody dared to block his path. Everywhere he passed by, a supreme sword might swept across the heavens and earth. The mournful wails of the sword gradually grew weaker. It was as though the demon sword was trying to sense how deep his obsession was. Wentian. Those from the Zhong clan landed on the ground, staring at the deep sword scars in the ground, as well as the staggering back of Qin Wentian. They felt as though their hearts were being struck by an ancient bell. They had always thought that the number 1 ranker in the Heavenly Fate rankings was an extremely powerful talent. They had always thought that the number 1 ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings was unparalleled arrogance. However, at this moment, it was as though they could see for themselves why the number 1 ranker on the Heavenly Fate rankings was none other than Qin Wentian. Is he really going to carry the demon sword to the moon continent? Zhongyi murmured. It was hard to imagine how terrifying Qin Wentian's obsession was. If this man didn't shock Grand Xia, who would be able to control the 9 continents? Doyens, the Zhong clan will temporarily be under your control. I shall follow the sword sun and enter the moon continent. Zhongyi slowly spoke. He lifted his feet and followed the towering sword scars, as well as the footsteps of Qin Wentian, as they walked towards the moon continent that was 10,000 miles away. How long would this journey take? Chapter 418. 1,000-meter demon sword. Even heavenly dipper sovereigns wouldn't be able to pull it out. How heavy was this sword exactly? Nobody knew that Qin Wentian was the first person to pull out the sword and bring it out of the precipice. However, he still had no way to wield the sword and could only drag it along the way. Every step he took was so heavy that it felt like an imprint. At this rate, he would most probably reach the moon continent in 3 years. When Qin Wentian dragged the demon sword, nobody dared to get close to him. Sword light illuminated the heavens and earth as boundless sword whistles rang out in the air. The mournful wails of the sword gradually weakened, as though it was moved by Qin Wentian's obsession. Many people followed behind Qin Wentian. They only saw that everywhere Qin Wentian passed by, deep sword scars would be left behind. At this moment, it was as though they gradually believed the legend of the demon sword descending from the heavens, breaking apart the cliff with a single slash. Qin Wentian took one step at a time, moving further and further away. At this place, there were people who soared up into the air, staring at the ground as their hearts pounded, only to see that on the ground, there seemed to be a boundless crack that extended endlessly into the distance. Qin Wentian wanted to drag the demon sword, but where was he going? If he wanted to go to the moon continent, was he planning to extend the crack for 100,000 miles? A month later, there were people who followed Qin Wentian, while there were others who stayed outside the Sword Reverence City. But from then on, the rumors about Qin Wentian would never fade away, although he only stayed in the Sword Reverence City for 3 months. Today, the entire Rising Sun City was in an uproar. Outside the Rising Sun City, there was actually a young man whose arms transformed into demonic arms, dragging a 1,000-meter-long gigantic sword behind him. Everywhere he passed by, fissures would appear on the ground, and the sword chi wouldn't dissipate even after a long time. What was even more terrifying was that the sword keening never ceased, as though anything within 100 miles of him would be lacerated by the sword chi. The entire Rising Sun City was in an uproar as they stared at the young man dragging the ancient sword behind him. Nobody dared to block his path. Step by step, the young man stared into the distance, as though there was an incomparably strong obsession within him that even the heavens and earth couldn't obstruct him. Who was this kid? The people of Chaoyang City exclaimed in their hearts. However, they soon discovered that many people were following behind the young man. These people had followed Qin Wentian all the way from the sword reverence city. And from their conversations, they knew that this person was none other than the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings, Qin Wentian. Where did this sword come from? This sword was a demonic beast that paid respects to the cliff. It remained unmoving throughout the ages, but once it was unsheathed, its blood dyed the cliff. The Li family and the Heavenly Sword sect were exterminated, and the Wang family's experts perished. Why did Qin Wentian do that? The Pill Emperor Hall had once promised Qin Wentian that as long as he defeated Zhang Chen in the Heavenly Fate rankings, they wouldn't interfere in the matters between him and the Pill Emperor Hall's Heaven's Chosen, Mo Qingcheng. However, Luo He reneged on her words and wanted to select a husband for Mo Qingcheng. In a fit of rage, Qin Wentian pulled out the demon sword that had remained unmoving since the ancient times, shocking the entire sword reverence city. Now he wanted to drag the demon sword along as he entered the moon continent. The people of Chaoyang City felt incomparably shocked in their hearts when they heard this. They actually followed behind Qin Wentian, wanting to personally witness how Qin Wentian would drag the demon sword into the moon continent. 2 months later, there were over 10,000 people following behind Qin Wentian within a radius of 100 miles. All of them were deeply affected by Qin Wentian's obsession. The reputation of the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings was well deserved. If Qin Wentian was able to retreat safely from the moon continent, the Pill Emperor Hall would never be able to eat or sleep in peace. What made them even more shocked was that the demon sword that was 1,000 meters long seemed to be affected by Qin Wentian's obsession. Its body seemed to have become lighter and lighter, and although Qin Wentian still had no way to control it, he was able to drag the ancient sword along as he sprinted. Compared to the past, his speed was many times faster. The sword chi was even more terrifying. The sword scar on the ground extended for over 50,000 miles. It was an extremely majestic sight. This sword scar was most probably the longest in the entire Grand Xia Empire. Qin Wentian's speed grew even faster, fast and heavy. Every step he took was extremely strenuous, yet he didn't show any signs of giving up. He was actually able to cover a distance of 1,000 miles in a single day. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had already passed since Qin Wentian drew the sword in the sword reverence city. Qin Wentian dragged the gigantic sword along. The yuan energy in his body seemed to have been completely depleted. His footsteps grew increasingly sluggish. In the desolate wilderness, Qin Wentian continued advancing, passing mountains and rivers, circling lakes and treading on the yellow sands. His gaze was fixed ahead, and finally, a vast ancient city appeared in his vision. Behind him in the distance, many people were staring ahead. All of them had seen the ancient city. 3 months Qin Wentian had done it. He actually used 3 months to arrive at the outskirts of the moon continent. They felt that these 3 months felt like 3 years. It was too far away. But unknowingly, they discovered that they had actually arrived. In the ancient moon continent, a number of silhouettes broke through the air. These people were naturally those from the transcendent powers who received the news. Among them, some were from the Pill Emperor Hall, some from the Star-Seizing Manor, and some from the Hua clan. These transcendent powers all had a grudge against Qin Wentian. Now that Qin Wentian had arrived at the moon continent, one could very well imagine how dangerous this place was. However, after these experts arrived, they didn't dare to advance. They halted their steps 10 miles away from Qin Wentian as they stared at Qin Wentian, as well as the gigantic sword that was 1,000 meters long. It was rumored that Qin Wentian used this sword to easily annihilate the experts from the Wang clan, destroying the Heavenly Sword sect and the Li clan. This sword was akin to a demon. It was unknown how powerful it was. Among those who arrived, there were those who were strong and those who were weak. Bai Fei was also among those from the Pill Emperor Hall. She stared at the young man who she had despised in the past, walking towards the moon continent with a single sword in his hands. Yet, nobody dared to obstruct him. Qin Wentian also saw them. He continued advancing towards the ancient city, his sword chi whistling through the air. The silhouettes all retreated one after another. Whenever Qin Wentian advanced, they would retreat. Madness. The spectators were all deeply shocked by Qin Wentian's determination. Qin Wentian advanced step by step, while the experts all retreated. When Qin Wentian stood outside the moon continent with the demon sword in his hands, those experts had already entered the depths of the city, vanishing without a trace. Nobody dared to get close to Qin Wentian. "Tell Luo He that I will look for her." Qin Wentian's voice reverberated through the air, along with the whistling of the sword. As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying sword intent gushed forth from all directions. Within a radius of 10 miles around Qin Wentian, the spectators all turned and fled for their lives. Even those who were chasing after them also fled for their lives. The killing intent contained within this sword intent was too terrifying. Regardless of those from the transcendent powers, or those who came here to spectate, all of them fled far away from Qin Wentian. Outside the moon continent, only Qin Wentian remained, as well as that 1,000-meter-long demon sword. The sword whistled, the wind gusted by so cold. Only after a long period of time did the sword intent storm gradually weaken, until it dissipated into nothingness. That's it. The sword intent actually dissipated. At this moment, many had looks of bewilderment on their faces. After which, their silhouettes flickered as they sped towards the outskirts of the city. But when they returned to the outskirts of the city, they were all dumbfounded. The demon sword stood erect in the air, pierced into the ground. The sword intent emanating from it had been retracted by too much, as though it was about to return to silence. Yet the silhouette of Qin Wentian had already vanished. Qin Wentian had left the demon sword outside the moon continent, yet he himself had disappeared. Qin Wentian, what was he planning to do exactly? Was it because he was powerless to enter the moon continent? But no matter what the reason was, this matter caused a terrifying storm to sweep through the moon continent in a very short period of time. Qin Wentian had once cultivated in the moon continent, becoming the youngest 4th-ranked grandmaster. He had participated in the Heavenly Fate rankings a year ago and obtained the 1st rank, creating a miracle. He stood together with Mo Qingcheng, announcing their relationship. However, during the ranking battle, Qin Wentian had offended too many transcendent powers. Many believed that he would die for sure. He had even killed Zhang Chen, wanting to marry Mo Qingcheng. Naturally, the Pill Emperor Hall would also be filled with resentment. Luo He decided to select a husband for Mo Qingcheng. Because of this, Qin Wentian unsheathed the demon sword in the Sword Reverence City, and dragged it for a distance of 10,000 miles to the moon continent. He told Luo He that he would look for her in the future. This matter caused a huge wave of commotion in the moon continent. Nobody dared to imagine that the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, Qin Wentian, would dare to challenge a transcendent power the moment he stepped into Heavenly Dipper. Back then, when Qin Wentian obtained the 1st rank in the Heavenly Fate rankings, his name shook Grand Xia. However, when compared to the 2nd ranker, Qin Wentian, the things he did couldn't be compared to the other transcendent powers. Today, at the top of the Pill Emperor Hall, Luo He stood at the highest point, gazing down at the people of the moon continent. Her gaze was ice-cold, and behind her, there were many disciples. Only Mo Qingcheng wasn't present. "Master, what about the son-in-law selection?" Behind her, Bai Fei asked in a low voice. "Do it as per usual. The commotion must be grand and majestic." Luo He's voice was ice-cold. Qin Wentian actually dared to bring the demon sword into the moon continent? Was he trying to smack her, Luo He's face? She had heard that the demon sword could break the heavens, and hated the fact that the heavens were too low. She really wanted to see if Qin Wentian would dare to bring the demon sword into the Pill Emperor Hall. "Yes, master." Bai Fei bowed in acknowledgement, sighing silently in her heart. She had heard that her master was giving Mo Qingcheng a final chance to choose a husband. If Mo Qingcheng didn't agree, she would definitely anger her master, Luo He. The Bai Fei at this moment didn't know if she should rejoice or feel sorrowful. During these days, many transcendent powers of Grand Xia had gathered in the moon continent. They were all here for the sake of Mo Qingcheng's son-in-law selection. Although marrying into the Pill Emperor Hall wasn't glorious, but if there was an outstanding young man among them who could marry Mo Qingcheng, so what if he married into the Pill Emperor Hall? In that case, they would be implicated by the Pill Emperor Hall. In Grand Xia, who didn't want to have a good relationship with a transcendent power like the Pill Emperor Hall. The status of the Pill Emperor Hall in Grand Xia was extremely special. The various experts also heard of the matter regarding Qin Wentian, and they couldn't help but to sigh in their hearts at how audacious Qin Wentian was. They all headed to the outskirts of the Moon Continent, wanting to test out the demon sword, only to discover that no matter how strong they were, none of them could pull the demon sword out from the ground. Nobody could do it. Qin Wentian was the only one who could do it. Chapter 419. The matter of Qin Wentian wielding the demon sword and standing outside the Moon Continent caused a huge wave of commotion. Currently in Grand Xia, although there were many who didn't know of Qin Wentian, how many didn't know of the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings? At the very least in the 9 continents of Grand Xia, other than those who didn't care about external affairs, how could the others not know of Qin Wentian? During these days, there were many who came to try and pull out the demon sword, yet they had no way to do so. There were also many who came to admire the sword, wanting to see what was so special about it that other than Qin Wentian, no one else was able to pull it out. At this moment, a white-robed silhouette floated in the air. This man was handsome beyond compare, exuding an aura that stood out from the rest. Among the crowd, one could tell with a single glance that he was different from the rest. At the instant he appeared, the gazes of several people landed on him, as traces of worship could be seen in their eyes. Hua Taishu, the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Back then, no one could shake his position. Not long ago, in the battle he revealed his cultivation base. He wasn't at the 2nd level of Heavenly Dipper, but was actually at the 3rd level instead. His combat prowess was so strong that it was terrifying. He even killed a 4th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. That battle caused Hua Taishu's name to resound throughout the entire Moon Continent. Throughout the generations, the top rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings would all become characters whose names shook Grand Xia. As long as they didn't die, they would definitely be ranked within the Heavenly Dipper rankings. And now, Hua Taishu was gradually advancing, revealing his brilliance. Given his current strength, he could be considered one of the more powerful characters in Grand Xia. If he was given a few more years, he would definitely become a character that stood at the peak of Grand Xia. And at this moment, Hua Taishu arrived here, staring at the demon sword that belonged to Qin Wentian. Hua Taishu, Qin Wentian. In Grand Xia, people love to compare the two of them because in the eyes of the younger generations, the two of them represented 2 different eras, both being the top rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings. The difference was that Hua Taishu was born in a prestigious clan, a heavens chosen of the transcendent power, the Hua clan. He had always been dazzling, like the sun in the sky, exuding magnificence throughout his generations. Qin Wentian was different. He seemed to have no background at all. The people he befriended were all young men of the same generation, but all of them were extremely outstanding characters. Back then when the Heavenly Fate rankings ended, there were many who were willing to fight alongside him on the Vermilion Bird Arena platform. Right now, Hua Taishu was here, observing the demon sword left behind by Qin Wentian. At this moment, Hua Taishu stepped out, staring at the demon sword. The demon sword was silent, emanating traces of sword intent. It was very different from the rumors. Everyone knew that the sword chi surrounding this sword towered up into the heavens, and from 100 miles away, one could feel the mournful wails of disrespect to the heavens and earth. Everywhere it passed, valleys would appear. But at this moment, it seemed to be in a deep slumber, and no one could wake it up. Hua Taishu stared at the demon sword for a long time before he turned and walked away. His countenance was as calm as ever. Nobody knew what he was thinking about. After Hua Taishu left, another silhouette appeared in this space. Naturally, she wasn't the only one here, but just like Hua Taishu, the moment she appeared, the gazes of everyone were attracted over. Although her face was veiled by a veil, making it impossible to see her features, just a single glance was enough to stun the crowd, causing them to be unable to shift their gazes away. This was naturally a female, clean and tidy, without a single speck of dust on her. Cold, it was as though no one could get close to her. She was like a snow lotus on top of an ice mountain. standing proudly in the snow, proud and aloof, not wanting to mingle with the mortal world. How beautiful! Her appearance stunned the entire space. Although no one could see her face, just from her eyes, as well as her skin that was as smooth as water, everyone could feel the magnificence of this female. This was definitely a beauty that could dazzle the ages. Although the crowd was stunned by her beauty, nobody dared to approach her to profane her beauty. However, in her eyes there was only that demon sword, as though she was thinking of something. She only stood there for a moment before turning and walking away, causing countless people to speculate in their hearts. Who was this female? Which transcendent power could produce such a breathtaking beauty? When the crowd finally reacted, they discovered that the silhouette had already vanished into thin air, completely disappearing without a trace. It was as though they were hallucinating, as though she had never appeared at all. Such a feeling caused them to feel a sense of loss, as though they wanted to take one more look at that female. This time around in the Moon Continent, there's no doubt that the Pill Emperor Hall is recruiting a son-in-law for Mo Qingcheng. Given how breathtaking this female is, there's a high possibility that she's someone nurtured by a transcendent power, or maybe even the Mystic Maiden Palace. In that case, we might be able to see her during the recruitment. I definitely have to go and take a look. Although they didn't dare to profane it, it was also good to take another look at it. Not only that, the Pill Emperor Hall was recruiting a son-in-law for Mo Qingcheng, and Qin Wentian brought the demon sword back to the Moon Continent. Such a huge commotion. They originally wanted to head to the Pill Emperor Hall to take a look. Outside the Moon Continent, there was an endless stream of people, coming and going. The only thing that didn't change was that demon sword. It stood tall on the ground, as though it was going to stay there, unmoving for eternity. Only that person would be able to awaken it. Experts from the various transcendent powers arrived at the Moon Continent, and for a period of time, the atmosphere was extremely lively. This was especially so for the central region of the Moon Continent, which was under the control of the Pill Emperor Hall. Not long ago, Luo He had already announced to the world that the selection for Mo Qingcheng's son-in-law would be held at the top of the 99 steps of the Pill Emperor Hall. For ordinary people, although they couldn't ascend the 99 steps, they could still stand at the bottom of the steps to spectate. For those below 30, with outstanding talent and an extraordinary appearance, they could all participate in the selection. Since this was a selection for the Pill Emperor Hall, firstly, the appearance of the chosen must not be too bad, or it would damage the image of the Pill Emperor Hall. Secondly, the age of the chosen must not be too old. After all, Mo Qingcheng was in the prime of her life. How could she marry a middle-aged man or an old man? And of course, the most important thing was still strength and talent. As for background, that was the last thing the Pill Emperor Hall would consider. For the selection this time around, the top 3 in terms of strength would be chosen, and the Pill Emperor Hall would then decide on the final candidate. Although the rules didn't state clearly that they had to ask for the background of the candidate, the hearts of the spectators were as clear as a mirror. But no matter what, leaving aside the prestige of the Pill Emperor Hall, just based on Mo Qingcheng's beauty, as well as her terrifying talent in alchemy, it was more than enough to move the hearts of the young geniuses. Although Mo Qingcheng seemed to have feelings for Qin Wentian, the Pill Emperor Hall had already announced this matter to the world, and it was being held in the presence of Grand Xia. Today, on the 99 flight of steps leading up to the Pill Emperor Hall, in a majestic hall, Luo He sat with her eyes closed on the main seat. Below her, Bai Fei and the other disciples were currently reporting the names of the participants of the son-in-law selection. Master, from the looks of it, all the transcendent powers have disciples participating. Although they aren't the most outstanding among them, they are all extraordinary characters. Bai Fei inclined her head as she respectfully reported to Luo He. MHM. Luo He closed her eyes as she nodded her head lightly. Are there any names of Hua Taishu, Chen Wang and the others? Nope. Bai Fei replied. Luo He didn't say anything. She also knew that this selection was for the sake of the Pill Emperor Hall. Although the transcendent powers were all extremely concerned, they would still consider the pros and cons. It was impossible for them to allow a character like Hua Taishu to step out. If not, if the Pill Emperor Hall chose Hua Taishu, would the Hua clan allow Hua Taishu to marry into the Pill Emperor Hall? Are there any characters worthy of attention? Luo he asked again. Nope, I didn't discover any. Bai Fei shook her head. There are a few who aren't from a transcendent power, and their strength is only at the first level of Heavenly Dipper, but such characters would be easily eliminated. This time around, outstanding characters below the age of 30, who had just broken through to Heavenly Dipper naturally wouldn't stand a chance. Emitum. Luo he nodded her head once more as she spoke. Go ask your junior sister. Tell her that there are still 7 days left, and that is her final deadline. If she really wishes to disobey my orders, I will make her obey me. Bai Fei naturally understood the meaning behind her words. At that time, Mo Qingqing's heart would no longer be in her control. That night, the atmosphere in the Moon Continent was extremely quiet. However, outside the Moon Continent, a commotion broke out. Many people could feel the towering sword might, and when they sensed it, they discovered that the aura of the demon sword was soaring up into the heavens, heading in the direction of the Pill Emperor Hall. Along the way, many spectators flew up into the air to spectate. Early the next morning, the experts of the Pill Emperor Hall stood at the top of the 99 steps of stairs as they stared ahead. Over there, a terrifying ancient sword with a length of over 1,000 meters could be seen embedded into the ground. Although it was still some distance away from the Pill Emperor Hall, because the demon sword was too tall, it was too conspicuous. Regardless of who it was, they would be able to see it with a single glance. The meaning was clear even without words. This was already a provocation. Last night, when the sword chi neared, many experts of the Pill Emperor Hall had already sensed it. However, although the sword intent was towering up into the heavens, it was only slowly inching closer. Initially, there were experts from the Pill Emperor Hall who tried to investigate, but when the sword chi swept past them, they didn't dare to advance. And when the upper echelons of the Pill Emperor Hall acted, the pressure from the sword chi was so great that they didn't dare to advance recklessly. Finally, when they arrived, the demon sword had already been embedded into the ground. As for the person controlling the sword, he was no longer there. Such a situation was already a great humiliation to the Pill Emperor Hall. They had as many experts as the clouds, yet they actually allowed a sword to be embedded into the ground within 10 miles of the Pill Emperor Hall. Luckily, Qin Wentian had no way to control the sword. If not, based on their conjectures, if Qin Wentian could control the sword, he would definitely be able to dominate all Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Luo He's countenance turned ashen. Last night, she was also frightened by the sword intent, and didn't dare to approach it. She simply didn't dare to imagine that back in Chu, this was the doing of a minor character that she wouldn't even spare a glance at. However, that sword was there, yet nobody was able to pull it out. Could it be that because of the provocation of a junior, the Pill Emperor Hall was going to mobilize their supreme elders? If that happened, the face of the Pill Emperor Hall would be completely thrown away, becoming the laughingstock of Grand Xia. Mo Qingqing was currently imprisoned in a palace. Although she was restrained, she couldn't help but to feel bewildered when she sensed the sword intent. Where did the sword intent come from? Why was it so strong that it permeated the entire Pill Emperor Hall? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.